Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
I'm back. I can't hear you, Brendan. You have to unmute your mic. Hello, Brendan. I'm Rick Walker. This is Maverick News Channel, and everything was going extremely smoothly until just now, because I see Brendan has met with Mr. Freeze. Well, I guess I will just have to fly solo here for a moment until he gets reconfigured and back into the studio. I'm not sure what's going on with him. I'm just going to pull him down. I don't know what happened to Brendan, but he will be joining us again momentarily. As I say, I am back. My voice is a little bit raspy, but I am here. I am alive. The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. And even though I'm not 100%, I'm still in a fighting mood, so I'm back because there's a lot going on that we need to talk about and a lot that needs to be addressed and a lot of politicians and bureaucrats that need to be held accountable tonight, in particular because of this Bank of Canada interest rate hike, which the media is spinning up as, I think, sort of as a routine thing. And they're certainly sugarcoating it. But I'm going to paint a different picture for you tonight than what you're getting in the mainstream media. I'm telling you that you better prepare because this is a sign of very bad things to come. There is a gigantic economic crater ahead, unlike anything we've seen since, I think, probably the 1930s and the Great Depression. So prepare. We'll get into all of that. We have some other stories to share with you tonight as well. I know that Brendan has some video clips lined up. We're going to show you firsthand video of shortages in stores. And Brendan is back with us now. Brendan, what happened?
My internet box just shut right down out of nowhere. But anyway, we are back, folks. Full steam. Well, Rick will be still recovering, I suppose. But
well, I'm full steam ahead anyway. I don't care. You can keep me down for a while, but you can't defeat us. I'm determined to come back and fight and make a difference, and that's why I'm here tonight. Because I'd like to honestly, I had like a bushy beard, and I've been laying around a lot. And I'm going to talk to you briefly about my experience with this illness that starts at the C, ends with a D, and I'm not telling you what's in between because I don't want bad things to happen. Okay?
Well, I'm just glad that I didn't get the channel shut down in your absence.
Yes, me too. It's not hard to do. All you have to do is look the wrong way these days, like look to the left or look to the right, and oh, you're banned. It's okay. We've probably said things. I know we've said things in the past that they're gonna find from previous, and they're just gonna take us down from previous broadcasts. It's just a matter of time. So I got a C thing, ends with a D. Thank you very much. Here's the deal, though. Like, let's say this thing I got. Say there was a thing you could get in your arm to combat it, or so they tell you. I'm glad I didn't get that thing because here's what happened with me. And I guess other people have different experiences, granted. But yeah, I got sick and started out with chills, started out with a fever. And I thought, well, here we go. But let me back up because here's how I got the darn thing. And I'm pretty sure this is how I got it. And this is why our politicians and bureaucrats and healthcare experts are making everything freaking worse. A client of mine came here to my studio about 3-4 weeks ago. And he says, do I have to wear a mask? Because, not related to anything to dealing with, the pandemic or anything, just because he loves, masks. But because I'm just trying to say things politically correct here. Okay. I said, I don't care. He says, well, I don't need to wear one because I've been vaccinated. I won't tell you what he was vaccinated against. It might have been rabies, might have been something else. But I thought, you're a freaking idiot. You think being vaccinated is going to stop you from giving a thing to somebody else. But I didn't say anything to him because, people saying that to me just shows how ignorant they are, how uneducated, how uninformed, and how little research they do themselves. So that wasn't the issue. Okay. So he comes in, that was 3 or 4 weeks ago. But then he came back a couple weeks later. So this is it was about 4 or 5 days before I got sick. And he says, he came back. And of course, no mask, no nothing. Excuse me. And he comes back down to the studio. I don't think anything of it. But now he's hanging over me at my desk, over my computer station in the other part of the studio here. And he starts hacking and coughing. And he's hacking and coughing all over me.
Ooh. Ooh.
And I looked up at him and I said, are you getting a cold? And immediately I'm thinking, this guy, for sure, he's infected. And he said, yeah, I think I'm getting a cold. I thought, you are a complete moron. I didn't say anything. It's too late now, man. It's too late. Sure enough. Whatever it was, 4 days, 5 days, I started to get chills and a fever. And I thought, here we go. As soon as he started hacking on me, right? And I don't really go very far from here anyway. So I don't see many people. I try to isolate as much as I can from society these days.
It's funny that you make that point because people were saying, "Oh, Brennan gave it to him."
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, over the microphone through the internet. So
Yeah,
these V things that people are getting in the arm, they're giving people this false sense of security. It's just a load of crap. So he thinks he's safe. He thinks he can just go around and even when he's hacking and coughing, he couldn't possibly be that he's infected. It couldn't possibly be, could it? Yeah, it absolutely is. In fact, everybody I know that's been with the thing, everybody I know, except for a couple of relatives of mine, everybody else, they've all been infected. They've all had it. They've all gotten really, really, really sick. So, yeah, I got it. But here's what I did. And this is not medical advice. Because I'm not a doctor. This is just my personal experience. I drank a little bit of water, not very much, not nearly as much as I was supposed to. But I took lots of vitamin D. I took vitamin C with quercetin. and zinc. And I went to bed. And then I let my immune system handle it. And the first day, chills and a fever. Not cool. Second day, nausea and vomiting. I was pretty sick. But I've been sicker. And that's an important point. Okay, yeah, I'm sick. I got sick, but I've been a lot sicker from other things. And it felt very much to me like a flu. It was a little bit different because it evolved, it changed, and it moved through me. And it did a couple of strange things. And your experience with it may be different. After after the chills and the fever, then it body aches and pains, and I got inflammation in all my joints and in my spine and in my knees, and my knees didn't fit together properly. It was a little bit weird because they were so inflamed that when I would extend my leg or try to get up, my kneecap wouldn't fit in my leg right, and it would pop, and it was just a little bit painful and weird. So that was really rough, and extreme fatigue and a massive headache. The worst thing on the next day was this massive headache that I got. Then I noticed, then it wanted to move into my chest. That was the thing that concerned me the most. But what I did is it was getting like a lot of post-nasal drip, which was going to fill my lungs with fluid. So I went and I just went in. I had some Flonase. So I started using that, and that reduced the inflammation in the nasal passages, helped reduce the post-nasal drip. And yeah, and then slowly I just worked my way out of it. So even though it wanted to go into my chest, the biggest thing was if I hadn't controlled that phlegm going into my lungs, I would have been in trouble. And then it moved down into my stomach a bit, and some lower intestinal issues for a little bit. I'll spare you the details, but it wasn't severe at all. It was just cramping mostly, and that's all I can say about that. So my takeaway from all of it is that yeah, it sucked for a few days, but I got better. My immune system handled it with some vitamins, and we shouldn't be shutting the world down for the thing that I got, which starts with a C and ends with a D, but has nothing to do with COVID. Just so you know, it's a different thing altogether. I'm not talking about COVID. Just for the record, and for all you YouTube police out there, I'm not talking about COVID. So you know. Get it?
It's a different thing.
It's a totally different thing than I'm talking about. And the vaccine, I can't remember what that guy was vaccinated for. I think might have been rabies, might have been distemper. I'm not sure which. So either way, it didn't help him when he was hacking and coughing all over me. So
your experience was a little bit different than mine in the sense like I had the inflammation. I did have the headache. And oddly enough, the inflammation started with my right knee. I was walking down the stairs and my right knee just gave right out on me and I almost fell. It was like, holy gee, what the hell is that? But I got to say, like, I didn't have anything with my stomach and nothing with my lungs. Sinus-wise, it was just like one clogged nostril. That's just really a huge annoyance more than anything. But man, it definitely wasn't worth shutting the world down over. If you're sick, stay home. That's how you're supposed to do it.
Well, you didn't have that thing either, right? You had the other thing.
I had the other thing.
Not the COVID thing. You had the other thing like I had.
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah. And I know I had it because I took one of those tests that's about 50% accurate.
The PCR or
whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is the point is, it was. I think it was accurate because I had all the symptoms and the test was positive. So it's pretty clear that I was infected. And I'm glad I got infected now. But here's the other thing. I know from all my liberal friends out there who have wished death upon me that I didn't deserve health care because I didn't get my distemper shot. Okay. Or my rabies shot. So I know I didn't deserve health care. So I didn't go see a doctor and I didn't go to the hospital because I'm not worthy. Right? I'm not worthy of health care because they told me so. Because they're so self-conscious and they're so community minded that they would rather have me die, which is understandable, than give me health care when some liberal who did get their distemper shot or rabies shot could get full care. I knew I didn't deserve it, so I didn't even go try to get it. I didn't even ask. So I didn't want to be selfish because I know from what they were telling me that I'm an incredibly selfish person. I'm sorry for that. I apologize. I didn't mean to be so selfish. But I tried to make up for it by not seeking health care from a healthcare professional who was going to probably try to put me on a ventilator and fill me full of who knows what.
I almost did because my symptoms felt more like strep throat than it did anything else. And so it's like, because I was thinking like, gee, this feels so much like strep throat. I could get rid of that with antibiotics, but I'm so glad I didn't, because if I would have went in there and been treated like an animal and then told to go away, it would have been a big waste of everybody's time.
Well, you didn't deserve health care either, Brendan. We're both in the same boat together.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize that at the time because I thought it might have been strep throat. That sort of thing. You know what I mean? So if it was strep throat, then maybe I would have deserved health care. But that is besides the point. Doesn't make any whatever. But I'm so glad that you're still here. And I'm so glad that we don't get to hear, well, thank God I got my rabies shot, because otherwise I would have died.
Yeah. Well, I apologize to all my liberal friends for not dying. I'm very sorry. I apologize. Please forgive me for living. And to Dave Epp, Member of Parliament, Chatham-Kent-Leamington, I'm still breathing, pal. I'm still breathing, exercising my privilege to breathe. So thank you for allowing me to breathe. I appreciate that because I'm still breathing today. Not sure if Mr. Epp and the government will allow me to breathe tomorrow, because apparently it's a privilege, not a right, as he plainly said to me during the election, which I thought was incredibly disgusting and revealing of his disposition toward medical bigotry. What a disgusting human being.
Absolutely.
To say something like that. And I was not there alone. Many people heard him.
I was there. I heard him.
Gross.
Yeah.
So sorry, Dave. Still alive and kicking and sucking in oxygen and exhaling climate changing CO2.
Here's to that.
Feeding the plants, but still above ground. So there's my experience with the thing that starts at the C and ends with the D, but is not COVID. It's a totally different thing.
And to anybody who donated to the Brendan Kennedy show, I know that we were saying that we're gonna get a coffin set up for Rick, but that's canceled now. But it's okay. We'll use the donations for the things that we were going to use before we thought Rick was going to die, if that's okay with you, right?
Well, all you had to do was tell everybody that I had died, and the Liberal donations would have come in like hot and heavy because they would love to contribute to my coffin. Jeez. And you've been, I don't know, were you there when any of those people stopped in the street, over the past 2 years to tell me that they hoped I got COVID and died?
Well, that was before I met you, but those sentiments are very common all across Canada. You can listen to it on public radio. Those discussions have been had. They're very bloody real. There is a call-in show on CBC Radio 1 Canada called Cross Country Checkup.
Yeah.
And it is a Liberal call-in hellhole.
The whole corporation is a Liberal hellhole.
I like listening to it, though, because I like hearing what they're up to. A lot of people would disagree with me on that, but the garbage I have heard on there's been people who are veterans and other things of that nature who would call in and be like, none of these people deserve any health care. They should be left in a tent to rot and die on their own devices. It's like, what?
I love Liberals, though, because they're so kind, gentle, understanding. They care for their fellow man, and that's the thing too. That's another thing that I have to I wanted to remind myself to say is that I genuinely appreciate and I'm grateful for their death wishes because I know that it all comes from their hearts.
Yeah.
They truly mean it.
They do.
They really did want me to die because apparently it's for the best. So thank you, Liberals. Thank you to all my Liberal friends. And I shouldn't say all of them. I mean, some of them are, how shall I put this, more reasonable and more humane than others.
Some of them have drinking more Kool-Aid than others, so. And some of our viewers, I'm sure, are going to be disappointed. Like Hallelujah, they all thought you were going to be a goner. So,
still alive. Yeah. I apologize. You never know. I could have a relapse.
It'll be the C to the T to the 200. You could be in big trouble.
Now I am isolating, so I'm not going near anybody till I'm completely better and time goes by, so I won't be spending Easter with my parents this weekend who are elderly. I don't want to spread it to them or to anybody else. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm just sticking to the studio and hanging around my house, and that's it. But I was, I've been up on my feet since yesterday, just a bit, and we're back, and we have lots of other stuff to talk about. So enough about moi. Let's get on with the show. Let's get this show on the road.
We have a ton of different topics that are on the chopping block today. Canada has raised its interest rates a whole 0.5%. So there's a lot of concerns that I do have to share with you about this, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Rick Walker also took some footage before he became ill, and actually, I think it might be a great idea if we were to maybe start with that content, because you gave me a little snapshot of it before we went on the air, and man.
Sure, you want to run? You want me to roll that footage? And why don't I think we should get into, before we get into that with the footage, let's set the table and let people know what we're talking about here. We're talking about the Bank of Canada rate increasing today by 0.5%. Now, that's not the rate that, so it goes up from 0.5 to 1%.
Mm-hmm.
That's significant, but that's not the rate you pay when you go to get a loan. It's not the rate you pay when you go to get a mortgage. That's the Bank of Canada rate, okay? So it's important because it's sort of a benchmark rate, and people get confused by these things. But it's an important thing to take note of, because this is the biggest rate hike in 20 years. The problem that we're running into here is that that shows to just have a 0.5% increase and have that be the biggest increase to just 1% in 20 years. The government has been my head's a little foggy still, folks. The problem is the government's been spending money and printing money, and that's fueling the inflation. They're trying to cool down the economy now by increasing the interest rates. I'm really having trouble with my brain. It's like full of fog, which is a side effect of this thing that I had.
Yep. It's okay. It won't go away for 2 weeks.
So I'm a little punchy, but
he's still all Rick.
They're sitting here, and the fact that this is the biggest increase we've had in 20 years, it shows that for 20 years we've been drunk on fake free money. It's been a roller coaster ride one way, downhill, accelerating the entire way.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I should say it's the other way, kind of going up, right? And we're about to come down and crash because it's been fake. They've embraced modern monetary theory, which is basically the idea that they can just print, and spend as much as they want and never take their foot off the gas and have no real serious economic consequence out of it. But I've been saying for a long time, you cannot defy the rules of nature. And the economy is a living, breathing, organic, real, natural thing. You can manipulate things for a little bit. You can play with things to a degree. But at some point, the laws of nature take over. And that's what we're beginning to see now, finally. Even though they've been manipulating the interest rates in order to keep driving the economy forward, by keeping interest rates low, it drives consumer demand. It makes it so that you don't want to save your money because there's no interest there to put it in, say, a savings account, or interest rates and investments tend to be low. So people get their money and then they tend to spend it. And by fueling the economy, by throwing more money into the economy, people get it and they spend it and they spend it and they spend it. But you're not getting a corresponding amount of productivity back out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also contributing to the housing crisis. Massive immigration at record levels, over 400,000 new immigrants last year, 400,000 more coming in again this year, over 400,000. The government saying it's a good thing, and then throwing all this free money at everything, and it's fueling inflation. Now they're trying to back it off. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Why don't we queue up? Do you have the news conference, Brendan?
Absolutely.
Let's get into that, because we'll let them lay out this their own case, and then I'm going to pick it apart and show you why they're lying to you, lying to all of us, and why you need to prepare, because this is going to collapse. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even in 6 months, but it's coming. And it's probably sooner than we think. We've known it's going to be coming. It's coming. And in a big way, because the government's economic policies are a colossal disaster in the making.
So I hope you guys brought your barf buckets for this one. I've already screened like about the first 10 minutes of it. Yeah, just the stuff that comes out of the mouths here of this guy. It's baffling. But anyway, without further ado, we'll let it roll. You ready, Rick? Yes.
I am pleased to be here with Senior Deputy Governor Rogers to discuss today's policy announcement and the Bank of Canada's monetary policy report. Russia's unprovoked, is there a problem? Okay, sorry. Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine is causing enormous human suffering, and our hearts go out to the Ukrainian people. The war has also introduced a major new source of uncertainty to the global outlook, and it is boosting already high inflation in many countries, including Canada. Against this
Can you just stop it for a moment,
we
Brendan?
have three main messages this morning.
Okay. Horse hockey. They're blaming everything on the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Blame it on Putin. Blame it on Putin. What we're getting in this interest rate hike, this is the result of many decades of irresponsible government spending and irresponsible government spending in particular during the Trudeau regime, during his reign, because he has spent record amounts of money. I don't buy this. They're blaming everything on the Russians, on Putin. Everything is because of that.
Your gas prices, your groceries, and this, that, and the other thing. Maybe
there's not one darn thing, not one thing that we're facing right now, not one economic problem that we couldn't solve domestically, right here, right now, and in short order. They choose not to. They'd rather blame it on Putin. They blame it on Putin because it's convenient and because they've got another agenda in play here. Anyway, you go ahead and play that, but I just don't buy that.
No.
Excuse.
Premièrement, l'économie canadienne est forte. En général, elle s'est remise de la pandémie et entre dans une phase de demande excessive. On a besoin de taux d'intérêt plus élevés. Comme on l'a dit, les Canadiens devraient s'attendre à d'autres hausses. Let me reiterate these main messages in English. First, the Canadian economy is strong. Overall, the economy has fully recovered from the pandemic.
Again, horse hockey. The Canadian economy is not strong. The Canadian economy is in terrible condition. Let's roll this video. Now is an opportunity to show you the video that I shot just before I took ill at a grocery store.
I think before you roll that, you should listen to all of the reasons why he thinks the Canadian economy, and then I'll pause it because it started with when he said this is all Putin's fault. We'll start off with that. Then we're going to tell you how great Canada. You know what? Don't listen to me. Let's listen to this guy, and then I'll pause it when it's appropriate, and then Rick will show you how well things are going in this country.
Oh, yeah.
And is now moving into excess demand. Second, inflation is too high. It is higher than we expected, and it's going to be elevated for longer than we previously thought.
Everything is fine, but inflation is too high.
He said, and
And
stop
third,
stop it for a second.
we need high.
He's saying there's excess demand.
Mm-hmm.
There might be demand, but people can't afford to buy what's out there. And there isn't enough supply. This is an unusual situation, but we'll get into all of that shortly.
All right, well, let's let it play for a little bit. He's going to spew off some stuff here, so just bear with us.
Higher interest rates. Our policy interest rate is our primary tool to keep the economy in balance and bring inflation back to the 2% target. This morning, we raised our policy rate 50 basis points to 1%, and we indicated Canadians should expect further increases. Let me expand on each of these three themes. Recent data suggests the Canadian economy weathered the Omicron variant remarkably well, and the economy has considerable momentum going into the second quarter. A broad set of indicators suggests that our economy is now moving into excess demand. The labor market shows this clearly. Job growth has been strong. The unemployment rate is at a record low. Job vacancies are elevated, and wage growth has reached pre-pandemic levels. And businesses are also telling us they expect they'll need to increase wages further to keep and attract workers. Looking forward, momentum in most major spending components points to strong GDP growth this year. Canadians are spending more on services as public health measures ease, and spending on goods remains solid. Housing activity has remained strong and is expected to moderate, but to still elevated levels. Business investment and exports are both picking up, and higher prices for many of the commodities Canada exports are bringing more income into the country. Higher interest rates should moderate growth in domestic spending as we move through this year and next.
Okay, I think so. He just told us how amazing everything is going in this country. Let's take a look, Rick Walker, at how amazing everything is going.
So here we are. Brennan, you can comment on this too, but here's just 60 seconds of footage at the local grocery store.
Nothing.
As you can see, it's a robust economy, just overflowing with consumer goods, with at affordable prices, prosperity for everyone. Yes.
I've never
seen such a great economy in my day.
No, neither.
I can't ever remember things being so good. Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? Look how great the economy's doing. That's fantastic.
And you know, maybe we could be like North Korea soon, and we could put like fake groceries in the grocery store to make it look like we're doing really well. But I gotta tell you, I went to the grocery store the other day, and it was exact same thing, and the prices of stuff have just gone up. I've seen items that used to cost like 50 cents going at like $1.50 now. That is a huge increase.
Well, that's massive. Like they're saying that inflation is somewhere around 6%. Horse hockey. Within the last year, we've seen prices increase to the point where I think the consumer price index is probably sitting at an increase, I would say, in real terms, probably closer to about 20%. So your spending power is probably about 20% less over the past year, maybe more. You factor in the increased price of fuel, groceries, heating your home, the price of vehicles. Used car prices went through the roof. New car prices, you couldn't get incentives on almost non-existent. Every car dealer was getting full pop for their cars, if not a premium on top. That's been the scenario with car dealers, and yet they're still suffering, even though they're getting good margin, because they can't get inventory. Because the economy's great, right? So
Economy's great.
what are the signs of a great economy? When you can't get things, when you can't afford things. And he's saying there's excess demand. Yeah, there's demand, but people can't afford to buy what's in the stores because, as you said, Brendan, orange juice has increased from what did you say, 75 cents
Yeah.
for a can of frozen orange juice to about $1.50?
Yeah.
That's double in price. So
Basically,
your dollar is worth half.
Yeah, and I see a comment here from Liz Valley. She says 30 pack of eggs went from $6 to $7.99. Yeah,
That's not a 6% increase.
No.
That's much more.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get real, and keep in mind that when this guy starts spouting numbers, when Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, the deputy prime minister, when they start quoting stats and numbers, they are spinning it. They always do. The governments always do.
And you know how else we also know it's not going well is look at this comment here. North Texas chicken breasts were $1.99 per pound. Now $3.69 per pound. Think about it. Things aren't going well here. They're not going good in the U.S. They're also not going good in the U.K. The fuel prices in the U.K. have gone up so astronomically that there was a convoy blockade on a major bridge in Dublin because all of the transport drivers can't afford the fuel to keep trucking stuff.
And so this is an important point, and it's good to have this from Per Kayla.
Mm-hmm.
Out of Texas, because what we're talking about here in Canada, this is just the Canadian perspective, but the situation is very similar in the United States and in many Western countries, all Western countries, really. So we can't just take what this guy is telling us. They're lying to us. We're in a lot of trouble. We're in a lot of trouble because this guy's boxed in. I will elaborate on this more, but he is boxed in, and this interest into using interest rates in the traditional way to cool down the economy by increasing interest rates in order to reduce consumer demand. This is a disaster in the making, an absolute disaster, but they don't have any room to maneuver because they're not willing to deal with the real issue, which we will get into after we listen to some more of what he has to say.
Roger that. So yeah, we'll let it play some more.
At the same time, Canada's productive capacity should be helped by robust investment, improved labor productivity, and higher immigration. Putting all this together, the bank forecasts the Canadian economy will grow 4.25% this year before moderating to 3.25% next year and 2.25% in 2024. The bank's primary focus is inflation. We are acutely aware that already high inflation has risen further above our target. The invasion of Ukraine has driven up the prices of energy and other commodities, and the war is further disrupting global supply chains. We're also concerned about the broadening of price pressures in Canada. With about 2/3 of CPI components growing above 3%, Canadians are feeling inflation across their household budgets, from gas to groceries to rent. CPI inflation hit a 3-decade high of 5.7% in February, above what we projected in the January monetary policy report. We now expect inflation to average almost 6% in the first half of 2022 and remain well above our 1% to 3% control range throughout this year. We then expect it to ease to about 2.5% in the second half of 2023 before returning to the 2% target in 2024. With inflation broadening and remaining higher for longer, the risk is that Canadians start to think that high inflation will become entrenched. This leads me to my third point. Interest rates are increasing. Raising the policy rate is our main tool to moderate demand, prevent a persistent buildup in domestic price pressures, and keep inflation expectations moored on the 2% target. The economy can handle higher interest rates, and they are needed. Increases in the bank's policy rate raise the interest rates that banks and other lenders charge their customers. These include rates on business loans, consumer loans, and mortgage loans. With increases in the policy rate, interest paid on savings products will move up as well. By making borrowing more expensive and increasing the return on savings, a higher policy rate dampens spending, reducing overall demand in the economy. And with demand starting to run ahead of the economy's supply capacity, we need this to happen to bring the economy into balance and cool domestic inflation.
Stop it, please.
We also need higher interest rates to...
Here's the problem. The inflation is not being caused in this case by consumer demand per se.
Mm-hmm.
It's being caused by government spending. Record amounts of government spending. A runaway train of government spending. Every time you turn around right now, the government has opened up the money spigot and they start pouring it over people. Certain people, not all people, certain people. You take that and you increase immigration the way they have, and you're fueling demand in certain sectors like housing.
Mm-hmm.
That's creating inflation because yes, you are getting more demand for homes in certain areas, and they keep making excuses like foreign investors. No, that's one aspect of the entire market, but they're blaming the higher prices on that. The truth is, it's the increased immigration. 401,000 more immigrants last year. You need to build that much housing.
And I'll just say, sorry to interject there, but I'll just say, for him to say, he was saying that higher immigration is going to help make things better, but higher immigration is going to be linked to higher government spending, which will lead to more government borrowing, which will lead to higher interest rates. It doesn't take an economist to figure this stuff out.
They keep doing their whole plan is to keep doing more of what they've been doing that's gotten us into this problem to begin with, only to accelerate it.
And people like the D. Walt here, we've already showed you on 2 nights ago's broadcast what happens to people when they're starving. You think mass formation psychosis is bad? Wait till you see what happens to your brain when you're starving, because it is not good.
So here's the problem. You get this increase in demand. Now we've seen housing prices double in many areas in just a few short years. That's not sustainable. And now a lot of people, especially first-time home buyers, young people, can't afford to get into the market. What's Chrystia Freeland's idea or plan? What's the government's plan? Spend more money. Dump more government money. They're not letting the market dictate. They're going to dump money into here and dump money into there, and they're going to build government-run housing. And they're putting, I think it's $400 million into that. Well, this is the problem. It's the government control over all of these things. It's the government manipulation of all these market forces that has created these problems.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because everybody's been drunk on free money for 20 years, you have a lot of people who are over leveraged. You have a lot of young people who have purchased houses, many of them barely qualified to get what they have, because the mindset, especially among today's millennials, is that they want it all and they want it now. So a lot of them, and I've been talking to a couple of mortgage experts, and they've been telling me that a lot of these young home buyers go and they max out their credit to buy that first house, to get the biggest house with all the bells and the whistles and the biggest thing they can buy. And they barely qualify, but they get it. And this is going to be a problem for a lot of them as interest rates go up. It's going to be a big problem, but not just for them. It's going to be a problem for all of us, because this has the potential to collapse everything, because our government has put a lot of their eggs, if not all of their eggs, into the real estate basket.
Yes.
Because the backbone of the economy is no longer manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
They've given it away. In fact, that's exactly what they did. They just gave it away to other countries. We don't have energy anymore. They're blaming gasoline prices on Putin. No, all they need to do is open up the oil spigots out in Alberta and problem solved. But they won't do it. They won't do it because you have these radical greenies who won't stand for it. And they're bound and determined to have us all driving electric cars. And how are they doing that? By investing billions and hundreds of billions of dollars. It's hard to even measure how much into this whole plan, which is even now inadequate. Where yesterday, Justin Trudeau was out, was it yesterday or the day before, out in British Columbia talking about 50,000 electric charging stations that the government is building or going to finance. Where's the private sector in all of this? Is this market driven? It's not market driven. Here we go.
No, it's not market driven. Yeah, where is the private sector in all of this? You'd think that, we know Nancy Pelosi appears to have cashed in on, the Speaker of the House in the United States. She has cashed in on the green movement. I mean, why aren't other people doing it? Seems like because it is government force, like the market isn't saying we all want electric cars. It's the government saying you have to drive electric cars, which is two different things, right? So you would think people would be all over that, but no, now the government's going to have more spending on that and that whole sort of thing.
These liberals are living in a fantasy land. Reality doesn't matter to them. They think they can just make things happen. They think that they can control everything. You can't control everything forever.
Mm-hmm.
What goes up eventually comes down. You need to let the economy, Adam Smith, the economist, and his lesson of laissez-faire economics and the invisible hand,
mm-hmm. Supply
and demand. You can't print your way to prosperity. And this whole thing is a house of cards waiting to collapse. And I'm not saying some people aren't making money right now. Some people are making a lot of money right now. Who's making a lot of money? Car companies. They can make a lot of money off this because they're being flooded with government cash and really forced to follow a particular path. So they could be making a lot of money. I'm not sure what the bottom line is really. I have seen some financial data over the past year that says some of these car companies, even in the midst of the pandemic, did okay. A lot of house builders are making money. People who had investment properties have made a lot of money, but it's all relative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's been a strange decade where everything is being driven by government spending, government programs, free market be damned. We're just going to make the electric car thing happen. We're just going to make the economy grow by bringing in more immigrants. But that doesn't have a positive economic impact immediately. You need to bring those people in. You need to provide schooling and infrastructure and healthcare for people and training and integrate them into the economy and into society. That takes time and resources up front. And then hopefully on the back end of that, you get productivity and increased prosperity that way. But what we have going on right now is a disaster. And the problem is it's not being driven by the market. It's being driven by fake government money, where they're borrowing from our future to finance everything we've got going on right now. They're just printing money. And when the more money they print, the less our money is worth. And so this, let's roll this again, but I'm gonna take us back, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about the 1980s. Okay, because there was we had high interest rates in the 80s, and this is where we're going again. But this is different and dangerous.
Just to clarify, do you want me to play that over again or let it continue playing?
No, just let it continue playing.
Okay.
Keep Canadians' expectations of inflation anchored on the target, so that as global inflationary pressures from higher oil prices and clogged supply chains abate, inflation in Canada falls back towards the target range. We are committed to using our policy rate to return inflation to target, and will do so.
I'm sorry. Did he just say raising the interest rate will fix supply chain? Is that what he just said? Oh, you're muted, Rick.
Just roll it back there, Brendan, and we'll listen to what he said again.
By making borrowing more expensive and increasing the return on savings, a higher policy rate dampens spending, reducing overall demand in the economy. And with demand starting to run ahead of the economy's supply capacity, we need this to happen to bring the economy into balance and cool domestic inflation.
I think he went back a little too far.
Interesting. Anyway, we'll just let it play.
Also need higher interest rates to keep Canadians' expectations of inflation anchored on the target, so that as global inflationary pressures from higher oil prices and clogged supply chains abate, inflation in Canada falls back towards the target range. We are committed to using our policy rate to return inflation to target, and will do so forcefully if needed. Let me now say.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, what?
We will do so forcefully if needed.
You're just going to get more aggressive with the interest rates.
I think
That's
I found the guy who taught Justin Trudeau about economics. The budget will balance itself. This must be the guy who taught him that. Anyway.
I think he's just dealing with irresponsible government spending and putting the best spin on it that he can. See, he's stuck. I don't really blame him. He's dealing with a government that's out of control. And he's trying to manage it. And he needs to maintain consumer confidence. The last thing he wants is from people like me to be telling you the truth. And he's not going to tell you the truth, because no matter how bad things get, he's always going to tell you the economy is strong. That's his job. He has to be a cheerleader. He's never going to stand up there and say, you know what? What the government did was a big mistake. And you better buy gold because the dollar is going into the toilet.
All right, we'll let it play some more.
Say a few words about the Governing Council's deliberations. On a bien sûr parlé de l'impact économique de l'invasion de l'Ukraine. La guerre a fait monter les prix de la croissance mondiale, surtout en Europe de l'Est. L'impact du conflit est le blé. On a aussi discuté de l'impact de l'inflation plus élevée sur les Canadiens et leurs attentes inflationnistes. Finally, we discussed the impact of increasing our policy interest rate. While we've been clear with Canadians that they should expect a rising path for interest rates, seeing their mortgage rates and other borrowing costs increase can be worrying. We will be assessing the impacts of higher interest rates on the economy carefully. We also discussed where rates might end up. How high will they need to go? I know many Canadians have the same question, so let me share the Governing Council's thinking. Canadians should expect interest rates to continue to rise toward more normal settings. By more normal, we mean within the range we consider for a neutral rate of interest that neither stimulates nor weighs on the economy. The neutral rate isn't something we can measure directly. We have to estimate it. And our estimate is between 2 and 3%. Today, we raised our policy rate to 1%, still well below neutral. This is also below the pre-pandemic policy rate of 1.75%. Il faut se rappeler qu'on a une cible d'inflation et non une cible de taux d'intérêt.
Let's stop it and let's get into some real numbers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So he's spouting the Bank of Canada rate. That's not what you pay. Here's how it translates into real numbers for you and anybody with a mortgage that needs to be renewed. Last year, a 5-year fixed mortgage was about 2.2%. Today, 4.2%. That's double. That's almost double in 1 year. Okay. The rate the bank charged for prime was 2.2 a year ago. It's now at 3.29. So that's the prime. So what does this really mean? It means if you have a mortgage and you just kind of barely qualified and you max yourself out and you're on a floating rate, you might be house poor because it's not just because your monthly payments are going to go up. And in some cases, if you're renewing your mortgage and you've been playing the market and you've been riding that free money train where interest rates have been extremely low, because don't forget that they were at some points we were at 0%, right? Where they were giving money away to banks basically for free. And they were talking about negative interest rates, and they actually implemented negative interest rates in some European countries because of this modern monetary theory idea. It's just, it's crazy. So what does this mean? It means that if you have if you're on the edge, or even not even just on the edge, and you see your mortgage increase be even a few $100s a month, that could break the bank, because it's not just your mortgage. You also have all these other inflationary pressures on you. Price of fuel to get back and forth to work. The price if you have to buy a new vehicle, if you bought one in the last year or two, you've paid a lot more for it than you would have otherwise. Your groceries, the cost of taking care of your kids, everything has gone up, up, up. And yeah, he's talking about wages increasing, right? Why is that? That's because they're giving away so much free money, they can't get people to work. So there's a corresponding reduction in productivity in the economy.
Yeah.
And you have to pay people more because they can't afford to live, because they can't afford to buy the groceries. So at a certain point, people just sit at home. And the only way to get them off the couch is to have to pay them more than the government's going to pay them. So now employers are competing with the government in order to get people to go to work.
And they'll compete even more once a UBI, if and when that sets in.
That's exactly right. Which is more free money, which is more of the problem. Just doubling down on it, tripling down, quintupling down, just keep on doing more of the same because they think they can just do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
I brought this chart up here because I thought, okay, well, when was the last time we had interest rates go up? Because I know it wasn't that long ago.
Mhm.
And this is the article. It's an old one, but I really just wanted to look at this, and I think this is what's important. Interestingly enough, this shows you that since Justin Trudeau has come into power, this is what the market was doing. And this is, correct me if I'm wrong here, Rick, but the interest rates with the Bank of Canada would typically go up this way when the government spends a lot of money. Is that true or is that false?
interest rates are a tool that the bank uses, the Bank of Canada, the
Mhm.
government. They use that if the economy starts to heat up
Yeah.
and you have inflation happening. But why does inflation usually happen? Like under normal circumstances, it happens because consumers start to spend because the economy is happening, right? They can be because the government is injecting some money and that can stimulate some things. But it's also because you could have like uh, it can be from a wide range of factors, right? Which is what the economy is. It's an infinite number of factors, really. But when the government sees that the economy is rolling along and it's like uh, rocking and rolling, but it's starting to heat up so much that there's more demand than there is supply, and prices are escalating to levels that are what they would deem to be unsustainable.
Yeah.
Which is why he touched on this sort of target of 1 to 2% inflation, which is what every Western free market economy sort of has as their goal. They want a little bit of inflation, but not too much. They don't want it to get out of hand. And what we've seen in the last couple of years has been crazy because of the way they've been spending money.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not natural in any sense. What we've seen is not regular consumer demand driving things. That's government spending fueling things. It's not because you and I said, you know what, I'm making a lot of money because I'm working at my job and I'm making all this overtime money and I'm working in the oil patch and I'm going to buy 3 snowmobiles this month and a yacht, right? Excuse me, I'm sorry. It's because the government's like throwing money on this guy and throwing money over here, and it's creating a false economy. So normally the government would, or the Bank of Canada would increase the interest rates because then it's like if it costs more to borrow money to buy a car,
Yeah.
then fewer people will buy a car, or you might buy a car that's a little bit less expensive, or you won't spend you'll put off buying a new appliance, or it just reduces consumer consumption,
Yes.
and that pulls the economy back and keeps everything kind of on an even keel, keeps it from running away, and keeps things sort of manageable.
So Under Justin Trudeau, it's very clear that this is a lot of rate hiking in a short time between 2017 and 2018. And then this drastic fall, which is insane. And then they raised them to 0.5% the other day, or back in March of 22. So that was just last month. So is it going to start going up every month now? Is that what they're going to do? Like that,
Well, look,
that's not stable either, is it?
Yeah, that's why I refer to the 80s. Okay.
Yeah.
What we've been seeing going on is the government has been propping up, like they've been inflating our economic balloon, inflating it, reinflating it with, in the US, they called it quantitative easing, right?
Yeah.
And they just keep pumping more and more fake cash from the US into the economy there too. And so we have an unprecedented economic bubble upon us without a corresponding amount of productivity increase. When Trump was president, we saw energy independence. He turned on the energy, he opened up the spigots. Manufacturing started to come back, but a lot of that was market driven. As soon as he reduced regulations, took the handcuffs off industry, took handcuffs off the energy sector, left it open to the people, they went to work and they started to build the economy back. But what we have now is the government regulations back on, and the government trying to force particular sectors with incentives, tax breaks, outright grants, and punitive measures against the energy sector, against the very things that were driving the economy when Trump was in office. And that's why there was unprecedented economic growth in many areas of the US. In Canada, we never had that during the Trump era. We had some benefit from it, spin-off into Canada because of the expansion in the US, but not anywhere like they had down there. And then when the pandemic hit, they just spent us into oblivion. So what they're doing now, at first glance, you might think, well, this is kind of going to be a replay of the 80s because we had high interest rates in the 80s. Interest rates the governor asked there, how high can these rates go? Well, in the 80s, mortgage rates got as high as 12%, as I recall. And I remember to get a loan for a new car, you could pay 17% for a car loan. I remember I went to go buy a Nissan Pulsar. I almost bought it and almost got hooked into paying that kind of interest rate. But as a young lad, I had a bout of, I thought twice, 3 times, 4 times about it and then didn't do it, which was a good thing because I would have been paying for that thing for a long time with that kind of interest rate on a car.
Very high.
Very, very high. So there's a big difference between paying, 2.2% for your mortgage and 12%. Well, that's where things can go. But in the 80s, there was still prosperity. And Reagan was, he was around and things were a little different. We had something in the 80s called supply side economics. And I remember, George Bush was accused of practicing, or what was they were called, who called it voodoo economics? Can't remember it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, the difference was back then, there was productivity. And the U.S. government of those days, the U.S. governments employed supply side economics so that industry manufactured a lot of goods. They created products so that your store shelves were full, with the idea being that if you produced a lot of very affordable products and got them all out on the store shelves, and affordable cars and affordable houses, people would buy them, and they would go to work to earn the money to go and get those things. And yeah, interest rates got high, but there was corresponding growth. And if you look back at the way Reagan attacked things like economic issues and inflation, he and the conservatives, they would cut taxes, and that would stimulate the economy.
For the record, voodoo economics comes out of the Nixon Ford administration.
No, they were, well, it was a reference to supply side economics as well, though, Brendan, in the 80s. I'm sure that it probably was a Nixon thing too, but I just remember it was definitely a big thing for a while where they were trying to demonize it using voodoo economics. I remember George Bush Sr. Talking about it a lot. Anyway, it might come to mind, but that's the difference between then and now. They had room to maneuver back in the 80s when interest rates went high. We have no room to maneuver, and this is an entirely different scenario. So they can't use interest rates like the proverbial brake for the economy that they always have. They can't use it as a tool in the traditional way right now, and that's what they're going to try to do, and it'll be a disaster. It will plunge people into economic despair. Many people, not everybody. Certain people are going to get rich, but a lot of people are going to suffer because of what they're about to do, what they are starting to do. So hold on to your wallets, folks, because this thing is a train wreck about to happen. You cannot cool off an economy that is overheating because of massive, out of control government spending by raising interest rates, because that's the equivalent of putting your foot on the gas and the other foot on the brake at the same time. All you do is dig yourself a hole, because you're going to be dumping money into the economy over here, telling people spend, 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 go buy a house. Look at all these houses we're building. All this affordable housing that we're going to build to solve the housing crisis that we created. And then over here, they're going to say, but don't buy that house because the interest rates, we're putting them up. So we're going to make it too unaffordable for you to actually buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And the jobs that are being created, whatever jobs they might be, are also, again, not long-term. They are government-driven. Everything is government-controlled. We are living in a socialist state now with a government, state-controlled economy. The market be damned. They think they can just control this thing and do whatever they want. There's still remnants of a free market system in there somewhere, but largely it's being overridden now by this Trudeau regime socialist economic agenda where they think they can just spend us into prosperity.
Yeah.
And now they've got this massive inflation problem, which I've been sitting here on this program for months telling people this from time to time. We are in trouble. You cannot do this.
No.
I kept saying, this is just going to fuel inflation to record levels, and we're seeing it. And the
And-
6%, that's a bunch of bunk. It's like 20%.
I got to tell you, my good friend, I have to tell you, as soon as Buddy came on there and was like, "Oh, it's all Ukraine and yeah," I was like, "You
No.
got to be kidding me!" You've been saying this for months. I've been saying this for months. A lot of conservative talking heads have been saying this for months. We all know this isn't Putin's fault. This isn't Putinflation. This is just inflation.
Yeah.
It belongs
It
to him.
absolutely is. And you can't see if this was consumer driven, then yeah, interest rate hikes. That what that would do is it would be because people are being so productive
Yeah.
and they have so much wealth that you're telling them stop spending it, start saving it. And then people would take the money that they have and they would put it into savings instead, in investments where they can make money through interest, higher interest. But if all you have is a bunch of fake money that the government prints out of thin air, and then they raise the interest rates, what's that going to do to people? Well, I guess you could take it, but because they're printing it, the money's worth less. It just that the numbers don't work, folks, because you're not getting a corresponding amount of productivity just by spending the money. You're putting your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. And that doesn't work. And that's where we're at. And that's why we're in trouble. That's why this policy won't work. He's got no room to maneuver. The answer to this economic dilemma is reduce government spending. Take the shackles off the free market. Incentivize industry to begin producing and all the different economic sectors to begin producing on the free market side, where people invest their time and their labor and they feel confident in the economy so that they feel that they can invest in businesses and economic idea and entrepreneurial ideas. Incentivize them.
Mm-hmm.
But don't just finance it with government money. Don't force it. That won't work.
And
It'll work for a little while.
Cody here makes a really good point by saying government created problem. So we're all familiar with the old process of problem, crisis, solution.
Yeah.
The government created the problem. Number one. Now we are going to be emerging into a crisis, and then the government's going to try and say, "I can save you."
And I know Cody's a smart guy. We know Cody, and he knows his stuff, man. And we're going to open up the phone line shortly, and maybe Cody wants to call in. Maybe Mr. Howes would like to call in too. Phone lines will be open shortly, and we can discuss this, and you can join the conversation. And maybe you disagree with everything I'm saying. I know that there are some home builders out there and companies that provide everything from plumbing fixtures to shingles for the roof of a house. Yeah, they'll make money in the short term.
Yeah.
Right. So some people are getting very rich as the government dumps money into these things, and they scoop up some of that revenue that ends up out there. But overall, the economy, this is not a good thing because it's debt. It's debt, and we have to pay for that. And when you give money to one group of people to buy a house, another group of people over here, that we all have to pay for it. So you're taking from this group of people and giving it to that group of people, or you're borrowing from the future, borrowing from your children's future to give it to people so that they get it, but then you pay for it later. And this is not a good thing. This is terrible.
It is terrible. Well, with that being said, I have to go and do a function really quick. So I think now is a great time to run our little commercial that we do. You could give the pitch to people about how they can help us.
Yep.
So I will just let that run for a second, and then I'll be right back. I'm very sorry, but I'll be just a moment.
No problem. We'll hold down the fort here for a moment. Well, just want to take that super off the bottom, the comment
Oh.
there, Brendan, while we reconfigure things here. There we go.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
I got it here.
We'll be
I'll
here
let it
when
run.
you get back, I promise.
All right. I will be right back. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I'll be right back.
And we will now. I think Brendan hit the wrong button there. This is the Maverick News Channel, and you can help us out.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
You can donate to help us at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. You can also click the hot links in the YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble descriptions, and that'll take you directly to the donation page. We do need your help. We are doing our best here, and independent media is under attack. And what we will be talking about in a future episode is this effort by the federal government in Canada to license journalism, which is, to say the least, disturbing, since the government should never be allowed to determine what a news outlet is or determine what news is, period. I understand why government licenses television and radio stations and has regulations in place with regard to that, because there are only so many frequencies available. But when it comes to journalism in general, and certainly journalism online, where there can be and is, when there is an infinite number of channels available, and there should be an infinite number of voices available through the public, the government should not be allowed to dictate who wins and who loses as a journalist and who qualifies and who doesn't. So we're fighting on that front, and we need to take steps here, and we are taking steps to make sure that our voice and other independent media voices will continue to be heard, even in the face of the effort to license journalism and in the face of pending censorship legislation at the federal government level. In addition to that, we're trying to bring you a clearer, truer picture of daily news events. Case in point, the topic we're discussing today, the economy and the government of Canada rate hike, which at 0.5% today is not in itself a disaster or an economic crater, but it does indicate where things are going. And we're hearing from the governor of the Bank of Canada himself that more interest rate increases are pending. We know where this can go. We've seen it in the 80s, as high as 12% for a mortgage. And if you're barely able to make it now because you have a big mortgage on a house and you've got it at, say, 2.2 to 2.5%, or even 4.2% today, if you go to 12 or even 5, that could be a few $100s a month or maybe $1,000 a month. You're going to be dirt poor, and still have your house. But then if you lose your house because you can't afford your mortgage payments, that's what we began to see back in the 2008 housing crisis, right? So if we see a repeat of that, that was a massive collapse. That is kind of also where this is heading, in my opinion. We saw that happen in 2008. And what did the government do in the US? They bailed out the banks. They bailed them out with tax money, with printing. They printed their way out of a problem. They kicked the can down the road. Well, guess what? The can's landing here right now. That's why we're seeing what we're seeing. This is just the beginning of a big problem. And he's not even today, the governor of the Bank of Canada, he's not even saying, oh no, we're not sure if there will be more. He's telling you there will be. This is just the beginning.
And we haven't talked about this yet, but he had made comments that inflation has exceeded our benchmark. They dropped the ball and failed absolutely on this. We told them, you print more money, things are going to start happening. And they're, oh no, everything's going to be fine. And that's the modern monetary theory you're talking about. They failed on the inflation aspect so hard. Very hard. And I am curious. I don't know how much.
I should say, Brendan, that normally those numbers that he's quoting, that wouldn't be a disaster either. Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you, those numbers are not accurate.
No, they're not.
They're sugarcoating all that stuff. It's much worse than they're letting on.
Rick, they failed the inflation aspect of this totally. And in fact, a lot of the economists that are with the United States government and with the White House, they were all telling us that, oh, there's not going to be any inflation. And then they're like, oh, well, we're wrong about the inflation. Well, they have blundered this very badly. And we're not in normal times right now. And what you said there, normally that'd be okay. Well, it's not. We're not. Nothing that's happened in the past 2 years is normal, especially with our economy and especially with housing, rental, and the whole thing that goes with that. There is so many problems that they have blundered with it. Mm-hmm. We missed the benchmark on it. Like, give me a break, pal.
Yeah. So this is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Brendan, give me a moment. I'm going to dump out of this myself for a moment. I'm going to get the call center set up so we can start fielding some phone calls. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that works. While you do that, mm-hmm. I will show people some of the extra footage I have. I'm not sure if we'll run time for it. So while you do that, I'll entertain people. So,
okay. Brendan's going to entertain you.
I'm not going to juggle or anything.
I'll be right back while he does his song and dance. I'll be back in a moment.
Well, so Joe Biden did have a press conference the other day, and in Iowa, and there was a certain incident that did happen with this. It's worth taking a look at. More or less, it's just really funny. Let's take a look at it. Now, we all know that when Mike Pence did the vice presidential debate and the fly landed on his head, the leftist media screamed and went wild over it. I think this is a whole nother level of thing. And you have to see it for yourself. The White House is currently denying that this has happened, but I'm going to show you the footage, and you could make your own conclusions. So I'll bring it up here.
Put rural America at the center of our efforts to build a future that's made in America. And that's not hyperbole. It's about being made in America. A lot of that has to do with this industry. I just had a...
Let's just replay that one more time. Just for fun.
A lot of that has to do with this industry. I just had...
So Yes, this is what I'm getting at 100%. I love this bird. It's very. A bird has pooped on President Joe Biden, and that makes that bird a true maverick. Absolutely phenomenal. I can't get over how hilarious that is. Wow. And of course, the White House denied it. They said something about it being a corn kernel, but very clearly, the bird has, as Angelica says, yeah, Biden got poo-pooed on. Yeah, he did. And that's an incident right there. It's kind of hilarious. But in either case, that's just something that I felt we had to share with everybody. I'm sorry for my my childish sense of humor there, but hey, we all need something to laugh at sometimes, and I felt that was a good enough thing to laugh at. Rick and Brendan, can you please invite Colonel Douglas McGregor? Sure, I would love to. I'll take a note on that. And yes, that's exactly it. Black cats matter. That's what the White House was trying to say. And interestingly enough, at this speech here, there was definitely more Putin shaming that the President of the United States is calling genocide. Oh gosh, it was corn poop. That was a good one. At the very same speech, Joe Biden did call what's happening in Ukraine genocide. We've talked about this on the show. Now, Justin Trudeau is also doing the exact same thing. Oh, Rick's in the show too. Okay. Hey, well, he's back. Welcome back.
I'm here. So, yeah, I'm sorry. You can go ahead there, Brendan, and we'll get people to call in here. I'll put the number up on the screen, and people can join the conversation anytime they want, really. Are you in the middle of something? I wasn't able to listen.
Well, I was just explaining that at that same meeting where the bird pooed on Biden, that he had called what's happening in Ukraine genocide. Those same comments were once again echoed by Justin Trudeau because they're best buddies. And I mean, we've broken this down on the show already, and we've explained that it doesn't fit the term of genocide. And again, you have to ask yourself, folks, politicians are not in a position to label it genocide. This is something that they would have to investigate and come into a conclusion on. But that's really all I had to say about that. And we could roll the phone number clip.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. And just take that down so that there we go. Okay. Yep. And yeah, so if you'd like to join the conversation, you can. And here's how, folks.
Join the conversation. Call 1-833-975-3733. That's 1-833-975. Free. Speak up. Speak out. Make your voice heard. Maverick News. Fighting for freedom by defending your right to free speech. Be a Maverick. Join us.
So join the conversation. Be a Maverick. Be a Top Gun. And call and join us on the broadcast tonight. Tell us what you think about the economy, the interest rate hike. Am I a doom and gloomer? Or do you agree with my perspective? Very interested. And we've got people lined up here already. Let's go right now to, I can't see exactly who it is. It's Tony. And hello, Tony. How are you tonight? Oh, well, welcome back.
Oh, we can't hear Tony, Rick.
Oh, hang on.
Yesterday, or
Can we hear him now?
I believe it was
Hang on a
yesterday,
second, Tony. Just a moment. Can we hear Tony now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, Tony. You go ahead.
Can Tony hear me?
Well, yesterday it was announced that the U.S. inflation rate was 8.5%, higher than the 8.4 they were projecting, and they were all aghast at that. And yet, I thought I heard our inflation rate in Canada is 5.2%. I find that hard to believe that our inflation rate is only 5.2. I think it's a lot higher than that. I think it's equal to the Americans, if not more. And I wonder, you and Brendan's thoughts on that. Do you think it's higher, the inflation rate?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's about 10.
And the interest rates have been kept so artificially low for, I'd say, at least 10 years. Now, it's like winding a spring. It's now snapped, and it's going to, who knows where the interest rates are going to go. You remember back in the 80s when people were locking into 16% mortgages. I remember those days, and it was awful. But the house prices weren't nowhere near what they are now. Right, Rick?
That's exactly right. And that's a point that I really didn't make forcefully enough when I was in my foggy brain trying to illustrate what's going on. Is you have this perfect storm, because I did mention that housing prices had doubled in just a few years in many communities. So now you're paying, in some cases, for a house that was maybe $300,000, you could be paying in some cases almost $1 million.
Yeah, that's the thing. In the 80s, the house prices were, I would say, almost a quarter of what they are now.
Yeah. And
you had a chance. But now, inflation, you take a $100 bill. If the inflation's 5% or 8% or whatever, you now have $92 or $94.80. It doesn't buy the same. And it's only going to get worse we're going to see food prices in the fall because we're living off the last year's harvests. So if not as much is getting planted, I'm really fearful what food prices are going to be like in the autumn this year. And just everything, supply chain issues, it's all like it's a perfect storm.
It is.
And, I'm just wondering if it's going to take a lot to get out of this, and it's going to be very painful financially and
See, Tony, I think that you've hit the nail right on the head, but here's the dirty little secret that the government's not telling you. I think they have no intention of ever getting out of it or ever paying any of this debt back. I don't think they care.
Well, sorry to boost the show, but Dan Bongino mentioned that with high inflation, they don't care because they can monetize their debt. Because you borrowed money in the past when it was worth, say, $1 million, but so the inflation 8%. Well, you're only paying back $920,000, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're monetizing debt, but they don't care about the average Joe or Jane.
That's right.
So
massive inflation is a way for the government to actually not pay back what has been borrowed.
Because the money they're paying it back with isn't worth as much as what they borrowed.
That's right. It's because they pay it back. They pay things back with fake money. That it's we owe you money. We'll just print some more. Here, this is the money we owe you.
Well, you remember history, the Canadian American dollars back until about the early 60s were backed by gold. Every dollar was backed by gold. What's our money backed by now? It's funny money. I can tell you that people have been buying up gold and silver like it's going out of style. and because they, it's just like, or almost like we're the Weimar Republic in Germany in 1920s.
Yeah.
A wheelbarrow of money to buy a loaf of bread and a quart of milk. It's it's getting frightening.
And people were putting money into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as another possible place to find safe haven for their savings, right? And
Yep.
they were seeing increases in value, but I don't think it's any mistake or any coincidence that the federal government has made it clear that they might be going after cryptocurrencies and not making it it's not as secure or as untouchable as people thought.
Think it is.
Yeah. And the reason the government's doing that is because they know that the dollar is not worth anything. They're looking for every place they can go to extract wealth. Yes.
It's the real hazard is with inflation. It's going to keep on going up, or it's going to stay at this level or more. And people who are like seniors, and we have a large senior population, and I'm in that now, I'm 65, you're going to have less to live on in the future.
Yeah.
And that is really worrisome. And, there are a lot of working poor too. So they may increase minimum wage, but what good is it if it doesn't buy as much as what the old minimum wage was buying? It's really kind of, they really don't. None of them are successful business people. None of them in political world. Most of them really, they couldn't balance their own checkbook. But I was going to say that the prices are right now. You have to take advantage of certain things, like home repairs and all that, because they're only going to go up. So I'm just wondering, where do you see the interest rates going, gentlemen?
Honestly, I see them getting back. I see them getting back into double digits.
And I don't think the government has a. How are they going to finance all these social programs, like with the carbon tax? It's just. We could pay off the national debt if we utilized all our natural resources for oil and gas and sold it to Europe. It would pretty much pay off the national debt if they use their heads. But of course, they don't think.
Canada could be
about climate.
Yeah, Canada could be the most prosperous country in the world. We could have the highest standard of living of any nation on earth. And by creating a country like that, we could help other countries around the world in unprecedented ways. But our government is so twisted, they think they have to squeeze people down, restrict consumption, keep the people from having too much, don't give people too much freedom, restrict everybody, restrict people's freedom. And that includes people's freedom to create and be entrepreneurial. They penalize it. I know as a small business owner, they punish you if you are a small business owner today.
Well, I've heard many people who had great ideas say, a lot of people in Ontario or wherever in Canada listened to it and they liked it, but they wouldn't invest a nickel into it. So they went to the States, and you know what? Some of them hit it big. Not all, but some of them. And that's the sad fact, is that, I think our Scottish heritage comes into play in Canada. You're pretty thrifty with $1 to our own detriment. No, I think I've been on the line long enough, gentlemen. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate
Thanks,
it very
Tony.
much. Our next caller is Larry. Let's connect with Larry. How are you tonight, Larry?
Hi.
Hello?
How are you? Where are you calling from tonight, Larry?
Avonmore,
Ontario.
Ontario.
Well, welcome to the show. What are your thoughts?
Well, I got a question.
Sure.
Why is it that Clinton can get impeached from having a sexual thing with his secretary, but we can't get rid of our prime minister for wrecking our country?
Well, that's a difference in political systems. I don't think they can hear me, Rick. So
They can't hear you?
no, I don't think so.
You didn't hear that?
Brendan couldn't hear you apparently. I don't know why.
No. Can you hear? Can you hear me?
I'm actually waved at you. Go figure that. He wanted to know is if Clinton ended up with having a sexual affair and he got impeached for that, why is Trudeau still in power and he's dragging our country in the ground?
Yes, I understand. It's just they are different systems. There are ways for a government to be held accountable and even taken out of power, but that would be things like a non-confidence vote in the House of Commons over something like a budget, which we just went through. But with the NDP creating this coalition with Trudeau, it guaranteed that budget would pass. Also, what would have triggered a non-confidence vote was when the Emergencies Act was invoked. When it went to Parliament for approval and to the Senate, when it went to the Senate, and it became pretty clear that they were going to reject it for a bunch of reasons that we illustrated in a previous program, reasons that
I watched all that.
the mainstream media wouldn't express or report on. If the Senate had rejected it, that would have triggered a non-confidence vote in the House of Commons. And that could have triggered an election, and then Canadians would have had an opportunity again to remove the government and Trudeau from office. So those are the procedures and the methods in place. It isn't that it can't happen. It's just that the methods, the procedures are different here than they are in the U.S. And we don't have impeachment in Canada the way that they do in the U.S. We don't have that here.
Yeah, it's all about the non-confidence.
Well, I think we should create that law since Trudeau's going around creating all kinds of stuff. We should create that one, and the people go in, clear everybody out, and install new people.
I was thinking about that in similar terms today, especially with regard to things like digital ID and surveillance.
I'll never do that.
And you know what I was thinking? I was thinking, the government wants complete surveillance over everyone and complete control over people. And I thought I might be in favor of that if we had the same amount of transparency from government. If they want complete transparency from the citizens, why don't we have complete transparency with our politicians? Why don't we get to know every move they make?
And Rick, just to add,
wasn't that one of Trudeau's big thing? Everything will be transparent.
Right. It doesn't seem like it. Yeah, it's going to be transparent on our side, not on his.
But things are good. If people start losing too many people, it's going to get ugly.
Big time.
This whole country is going to be at war.
Well, I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope not.
That's safe. But you can only push people down so far before they start fighting back.
Yeah. Well, we saw that with the truckers, right? And that scared Trudeau. He didn't really understand what it was either, I don't think. To him, he saw that as some gigantic, oh my God, they're coming to get me. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I married a trucker, so just like but I'm handicapped. I couldn't go down there, but
Well,
it was something beautiful to watch, and I was impressed. But they definitely cracked open the bucket and opened a lot of people's eyes.
yeah.
Just like, holy cow. Okay, you go on to your next one. Thank you very much, honey.
Oh.
And the last time I watched one of those, what do you call them? Those news stations, like, what do you call elite? Not elite.
Mainstream.
Legacy.
Yeah.
News stations.
Yeah.
Last time I watched one, you were behind the desk.
Oh my gosh.
Mr. Rick.
Well.
So yeah,
Well-
I liked you back then, and I like you now.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
No problem, hon. You take care of yourself, guys.
Yeah, you too.
Brandon, sorry I didn't take care of yourself too, honey.
Thank you very much. Have a
Okay,
great
bye.
evening.
Bye.
Yeah, I don't think they could hear me, Rick. So I might
can't
have to.
hear you?
Turn this phone off.
Well, they should be able to hear. I don't know. Let's check with this caller here. Who do we have on the line now? How's 1960 economy housing? Can you hear us?
Sure, I hear you fine. Do you hear me well?
Oh, yes. And who do we have on the line with us?
Scott House.
Scott, how are you tonight? Thanks for calling back in.
Not too bad. I'm glad to see you're back, Rick. And Brendan did okay.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I'm surprised that anybody wanted me back after having Brendan all to yourselves.
No, you guys are a good balance. So basically, we're talking about housing, and we can't escape that without talking about money and finance. Correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so correct me when you think I'm wrong with my theories, because monetary and economics, it really is theoretical, right? It's not a hard science, like,
True.
say, physics.
Yep.
So we could start at chapter 1 or 2. Chapter 1 really starts back in nearly biblical times when the first Rothschilds got thrown out of the Middle East. But we'll start in 1971. What happened in 1971 was we went off the gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that important? Because the gold standard was something physical, something traceable. So we went off the gold standard, and we went on to where we based it on projections on gross national product. So, and that involves a lot of mathematics. So basically what happened was money got magicked. It became very, very unreal.
Mhm.
So it became, you could do whatever you want with it. Remember the Wall Street buyout? Again, you can do whatever you want with it, which is kind of cool, because the claim is that we live in a capitalistic democracy society. Capitalism involves buying and selling, profit and loss, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so it's neat how they pulled that off, how the 1% just managed to openly shovel more money into their pockets. So there's a lot to be said about modern monetary theory and the previous monetary theory. But so we want to talk about housing. And that's why we talk about capitalism, and that's why we talk about money, because it's a big item ticket. There is a lot of money to be made in it. And so basically when we talk about fixing the housing market for the user, we are basically saying to the people with all the billions of dollars invested in it, all the lobbying that they've done with the governments to get what they want, those are the people where they're saying, hey, you know this fucking con game that you're running? Well, we're onto it. We want it to stop. And our government is the middleman between us, the buyer, the seller, the user, the servicer. But the middleman right now isn't working for us. He's working for the rich people that have the money invested in the housing. So, and if you want to add more confusion to this picture, we keep accepting more and more of the edicts from the UN, from the Agenda 2030, all those. We keep using them into Canadian law. We're bringing them into Canadian law. Well, one of the big plans from the Agenda people is it not that we're supposed to live in mega cities and there's agricultural belts and then green belts that are unused. So if we start allowing the building of small residential units, we increase the sprawl and we come into conflict with that later plan. So if I sound crazy, I'm sorry. I'll go and get my tinfoil hat.
No, not at all. I completely follow you.
I as well.
So there is basically very little remedy that can be done right now. Like, what happens if they say, okay, we've got to nationalize this housing problem? Well, when you nationalize something, you're basically saying that capitalism isn't working here right now. And so what's the opposite of capitalism? Communism.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and again, as I've said to you ages ago, I yacked about the deconstruction phase. We're in the deconstruction phase, the failure of our systems. It's all part of like a Marxist think tank that they had, the Frankfurt School. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's called accelerate the incongruities or accelerate the differences. So basically you have a system. And the system could function if you tweaked it, if you actually applied to fix it. Or you could throw a monkey wrench into it to ensure that it falls apart. Right now, things are set up so that they're ensured to fall apart.
Yep.
So I don't think we're going to see any meaningful change to the housing market, because basically anything the government does meaningful to it goes against the concept of capitalism. And the people that are making money from the industry, they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep making money from the industry. You and I know that the only way for it to really get fixed is for the outrageous amount of money made off of it to stop.
Can I get your thought on something else, Scott?
Certainly.
When we went off the gold standard, Nixon tied the value of the dollar to oil, because with Saudi Arabia, they made the agreement that...
Yep, they had that deal. We got your back provided you trade oil in American dollars, and that props up our currency, yeah.
So where do you think it leaves us with governments now pushing toward getting off of oil and gas, making everybody drive electric vehicles, getting rid of, like in Canada, they want to get rid of natural gas altogether.
Yeah.
Actually, they want to get rid of mobility. That's what they want to get rid of. They want to ensure energy poverty, which again reduces the standard of living, which again is hard on the people, which again makes the next proposed step, the Great Reset, seem like a saving grace. When in reality, we're living in the woods because you burned down the house that we were all painting. So this kind of deal. So it's part of the deconstruction.
But if we don't have, I see that as part of the deconstruction, but it seems like they're undermining our own economy by getting us off of oil, when oil is the thing that's propping up the dollar.
The American dollar, as you recur, there were three countries earlier. What was it, 5 years ago or 7 years ago? It was a triumphant. What was it, Iraq or Iran? They bombed the shit out of it because of it. They were going to set up a deal where they, and I think it was China and Russia, correct me if I'm wrong, but these three countries were going to trade oil in their own currency.
Yeah, and Libya tried to get off that too, but that's why they went after Gaddafi, apparently. But go ahead.
So as I understand it, though, the Americans, they valued their dollar against oil, but we've valued our dollar against the gross national product of the country, did we not?
Yes. I believe
okay,
that's
so
correct,
a little bit different, but I agree with you. The Americans, and again, I forget who was it. Somebody put it like the government's, it was somebody in the chat, and my response was, if you say it loud enough, it will totally happen. To take off on the cannons, if you tell it loud enough and enough times, they'll believe it. The government, you would almost think that they actually believe their own BS, that if we squeeze the people hard enough, somebody will fart out the solution. Somebody somewhere, it'll shake loose of them. But I don't believe that is really what they believe. This is, as I said, an intended implosion to destroy everything we have so it can be replaced with one world government.
Yeah.
So the destruction, the destruction of the currency, it's kind of cool too, because it's the same old game, and yet it's got a different end. The old game of profit and loss was to gain power. Well, if you think about it, these people already have power. What happened also in 1971? That was the first meeting of the World Economic Forum. I shit you not. The first meeting. And what has happened globally to the majority of Western countries since 1971?
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't been good for them economically. If you took for the growth of the individual citizen pre-1971 to after 1971, you'll see by so many different metrics and standards that the individual income has gained X amount, where the 1% income has gained, I think it was like 138% increase. So it's funny. My belief is that the rich people, they've already, the 1%, the movers or shakers, they've already made their deal, right? They're already lockstep with each other. So money really doesn't matter that much to them. They're beyond it. My point in this is how many companies now have taken moves that normally would be disastrous for them. Remember the Gillette move about the transgender thing and fathers being bad in that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that lost them a lot of revenue, but they didn't care because this is part of the bigger picture that the government and others are pushing. It's part of the bigger ideology, so they could take it on the chin. But if you think about it, these people, they already are the government, Rick. How many people in the financial section of the White House actually started off at Sachs Goldman, which is a private institute? Just like the Federal Reserve, which now controls all their currency. I mean, the government doesn't control the currency of the United States. A group of private, nameless loners do. So again, to talk about finance and an economy with any certainty, again, like it was a proven science, like physics, it's not. It's not a proven science.
So where do you think this is going with interest rates, and are we heading into the economic crater that I think we're heading toward?
Yeah, I think we are definitely. It's like once you stop a steam engine, it takes a while for that engine to build up a head of steam again, right? Ditto for all the economies. You've literally shut everything down. There are cargo containers held up. There's and all these things. It's actually due to the government restrictions. I mean, that many people have not left the workforce because of COVID. I mean, deaths or illness to shut things down. What has shut things down has been what the government has done. So, and we are all talking about this, and we can see the negative aspects of it. And yet the government can't see the negative aspects? Really? You've got thousands of people working in Parliament, and they can't see the negative aspects? Or is it perhaps they don't care about the negative aspects because they're insulated from it? They just gave themselves a raise, right?
Yes, that's right.
Big time.
They're made. It's just a game to them. Like Mr. Nichols pointed out, they're more concerned about getting their bill passed rather than the content of every bill before them.
Yeah. And do you see the reference to Putin all the time as a scapegoat?
Oh yeah, it's the blame game, isn't it? It's so. I don't know how people mistake this blame game, because it's really, really obvious. I mean, the Americans don't buy a lot of oil from the Putin, and they buy more fertilizer. Everybody in North America, we have pretty good oil reserves. So the only thing we buy from the Russians is fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we're now expecting, just as the one guest pointed out, it would be wise to expect lesser crop returns because of all the tomfuckery that's gone on. And so we promised Ukraine wheat. So, it's one thing when we fall down on our promises, like we've never made our climate agenda promises. We've never made our CO2 promises. But now we're promising to keep another country from starving. That's pretty much what we said.
And to make matters worse with that,
you are correct. In so many ways, it is going to be a smoking economic crater. And they're still in the car with the pedal to the metal, driving towards the cliff.
Absolutely. Well, Scott, is there anything else you want to bring up? I've got Sean has been waiting.
No, I'm glad. I'm sorry I went on so long.
No.
Thanks for letting me air my views. And if anybody thinks that I'm incorrect, please point out to the chats, and I'll try and check it out to see like where I failed in my logic or observations. Rick, I'm glad you're back.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Scott. You know what we should
I got to get off the phone and let's.
Yeah.
Pardon?
And what we should do is we should have you on as a guest contributor. Where we can see your gorgeous, handsome face, and you can join us for the whole
I've got new
broadcasting.
lines. You can count them with me.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, I've got new lines on my face since you last saw me. You can count them with me. Yes, I'd like to do that, just so long as you don't hook up any device where they can press a button. I get a mild shock when they don't like what I say.
No, that's okay. I take most of the heat on this end, so
yes, he does.
It's all fine. We filter out any of the negative stuff coming back to you, so you'll be safe.
Again, thanks. I'm glad you're back, and I'll get off the phone and let the next guest share with us.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's always a pleasure. Talk to you again soon.
Best of all.
Hey, Rick. They can't really hear me, so.
Hello, Sean. Can you hear Brendan? You go ahead and see if.
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello. Yeah, see, they can't hear me.
I can hear you.
You can
you. Hear me?
So I mean, I had a bunch of stuff to say. Can you hear me?
Well, we can hear you. Go ahead, okay. Sean.
I had a bunch of stuff to say, but I mean, Scott, pretty much nailed most of it. I mean, what we're witnessing is the controlled demolition of the economy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, every time they announce more money for Unicorn School in Zimbabwe or whatever the hell Trudeau feels as though he needs to do that day, and it seems like it's every day now. And they fire up that printer, your dollar gets less and less and less, which means your time and your hours of work and what you put those 40 hours a week in are worth less and less and less, right?
I agree 100%. And I think what he's doing it should be criminal.
Absolutely. And he knows what he's doing. A lot of people are mistaking this for stupidity. I mean, he's running the credit card as hard as he can.
Yes.
And what they're going to do is they're going to destroy the economy. And I mean, they're going to prop this up as long as they can. Make no mistake about it. They can't just destroy everything immediately. And I agree. Next fall, people are going to start seeing what's, once we see the aftermath of all this nonsense and these, like, oh, let's put sanctions on Russia. Well, Russia doesn't care about your Nike shoes and your iPhones.
No, they don't.
Russia's what we should have been years ago. Totally in-house, self-sufficient.
Yeah.
But they got so greedy and sold it all off. So that's why we're in the situation. And they're going to provide a solution to the problem. Don't worry. I mean, they're going to crash everything, and then they're going to go, oh, well, we have a solution for that, And BlackRock will come and buy up all the houses that have defaulted, and then they'll rent them back to you.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
And that'll make them more powerful and more powerful.
And to kind of add to our woes,
and, you're seeing it too. Like all these billionaires, they're buying physical assets, right? Because they know it's coming. You got Dr. Gates buying all the farmland and CP Rail and whatnot.
Yeah, Brendan wants to ask you a question. I just want to make sure that you can actually hear him. So go ahead, Brendan.
Sure.
Hey, it's Brendan. Can you hear me? Yeah, they can't hear me, man. Send me a.
I cannot hear him.
Okay, yeah. You can't hear Brendan, so I'm going to send Brendan a link to the other studio, and we'll get you hooked up that way.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
But yeah, just tell him to continue on. I'll make I have a.
So you can continue to talk there, Sean. What are your further thoughts regarding this?
I mean, that's like Scott really nailed it. I mean, he's not wrong. But I'm just adding a few points. Like you're seeing these billionaires buying up all these physical assets. Why? because they know the dollar is going to be useless. So they have all these billions of dollars. Well, they got to put it into something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're putting it into food production. They're putting it into all these things where they're going to be able to manipulate and control you, right? And then your time and your labor becomes less valuable and less valuable to you and more valuable to them.
I agree, absolutely.
And
they're going to make
you know,
everyone dependent on the government, and I think that's the ultimate goal. With dependency comes control, and
absolutely.
that's what the plan is, as written down in the Great Reset too, right? Is to
Absolutely.
they're going to forgive everyone of debt and put everybody basically on a universal basic income, but you pay for it with your freedom. They make slaves out of everyone.
Yeah, and I mean, all the morons out there will jump right on it and feel good about it. You know, to support the latest thing, they'll go, oh, well, we have to do it. You know, we have to. It's for the better good, and they're all going to jump on it, and they're going to, you know, it's like you throw out a box and cats jump in it, right?
Oh,
well,
yeah.
that's exactly what they're going to do. They've been doing it all along.
Yes. Yeah.
Just walk this way, right? You know, put on your mask. You know, like stand with Ukraine, but don't listen. Don't worry about Yemen. Don't worry about that. Don't pay attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Okay, folks, I'm gonna step out of.
Most people have no idea this is happening either. Like if you talk to someone, like I talk to people about this, and they look at me like I'm a moron.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a light goes off, though. You know, if you drop, like, what do you think is going to happen if they keep printing money like this? You know, some people have no clue.
Yeah.
You know, and they won't see it coming.
I agree.
So
we're going to move on.
Yeah,
we're going to move on here. We've got a couple of callers who've been waiting quite a while.
Yeah, no worries.
So I appreciate the call, though, very much, Sean. Good points. Very good points.
Yeah, thanks.
And who do we have on the air with us now? Freedom, so kind of the United States, it says here, but I don't see a name. Albert, I believe it's Albert.
It's Albert Diaz, yes.
Well, welcome.
I'm
and where
here.
exactly are you calling from tonight, Albert?
I'm calling from Miami Beach, Florida.
Oh. Sorry, where exactly is that?
Miami Beach?
Oh, Miami Beach. I didn't understand. I got you. Well, welcome to the show.
Okay. Well, I'm honored that you took my call. I'm going to suggest certain things, if I may, and also make a comment that everybody agrees. I think that most people that are listening and viewing your show agree that we live under tyranny, that things need to change. And there are certain narratives about both sides. The Trudeau side and the Biden side says that, you know, we are ignorant and primitive people that we cannot think and so on and so forth. And the action is repression, jailing, and killing, even killing. The narrative on the other side is turn your other cheek, be religious, be faithful, and we will succeed that way. Obviously, that's not happening. And my suggestion is that there are many other non-violent, and I stress non-violent strategies to turn down a tyranny. And this needs to be considered. Because we can complain forever and ever. And you know what happens? That the tyrants love it. They get away with it, man. What could be better than our submission? You know, it doesn't matter how many protests, how many truck drivers are against us. Who cares? They smell. They stink. They are ignorant. They're horrible people. So I'd like your comment. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I agree largely with what you're saying. I think that there are ways to address government change in peaceful, lawful ways. And that is the only way that we can move forward if we're going to end up with a society that we want to live in. Because anything other than that is counterproductive and takes us down a path that is just as bad as what we have, maybe worse. So it must be democratic. It must be peaceful. It must be lawful. And yes, I agree that the tyrannical forces that are upon us love us fighting with each other. They're certainly trying to divide and conquer. And they've certainly succeeded in dividing, because our countries, Canada and the United States, have never been more divided.
Mhm.
That is absolutely true, 100%. So I totally agree with you. And those are my thoughts. Any other thoughts, Albert? I don't know if Albert is still with us. He may have.
Oh, I am here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you had hung up. No. I think that the big issue has to do with changing strategies,
Mm-hmm.
and that, you know, to have leaders that can promote these. Of course, I can't. I'm nobody, and I'm a peaceful man. So that's not my role. My role is to inspire people to change this world that is turning for the worst. And that's where I'm at right now.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that is a very good point you make there, Albert, because it's just like what they say, making the world a better place starts with you, and it starts with your room. You clean your room, and then you can work on the next thing, and then you work on the next thing, and then you work on the next thing. So hats off to you. Definitely keep inspiring people. It's important. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is.
Yes. The problem is, what's the strategy going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And it's complicated. And these forces have been planning this and even beginning to execute it for decades and decades since after World War II,
Mm-hmm.
working toward where we're at today. So, and it's taken this long just from people to start cluing in to what they've been doing. And now we're facing the loss of our freedoms in totality. So what's the strategy going to be? I'm not entirely sure. We're just trying to do our part here with this podcast and by expanding out what we're going to be doing. And of course, we need your help. So now's as good a time as any, I guess, to remind people of how you can help us. And with that, we'll take this short 30-second break, and we're going to come back. We've got a couple of callers on the line.
If I may say something?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, please
if I may say something at the end?
Yeah.
Okay. Everything starts with communication. If we don't communicate, if we're not able to talk through our own psychopathological, in a way, filters, psychopatho-social filters, we're not going to get anywhere, okay? Because the issue has to do with some kind of incredible division that has happened. And we are not willing. I mean, one side sort of, I think my side is willing to listen, but the other side is already set on their views and their tyranny. So if there were professional people that were able to facilitate political communication within parties in Canada and the United States and all over the world, I think that would be the starting point. If we do not listen to each other and what we have to say, whether it's valid or invalid to the opposite party, it doesn't really matter. But we have to come to some kind of unity, a unity of working for the people of Canada and the United States. And that's where I stand with being able to communicate.
Okay, well, we appreciate the call very much. And you can call back anytime, Albert. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Albert.
And we'll be right back after this short 30-second break.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
And you can donate at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. And we could use your help. You can donate by clicking the hot link in the YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble descriptions. If you haven't subscribed over on Rumble yet, please get over there and do that. It's important that we get as many people off the YouTube train and onto the freedom of speech train over on Rumble as possible. So that's important too. But we could use your financial help and any donation that we get is greatly appreciated. To those of you who have already donated, gracias. Greatly appreciated.
And you could also help us out by hitting the thumbs up button, the subscribe button, and the bell for notifications, and give our content a share. Because we all know, just like our previous caller just said, it's all about communicating. And, we talk about different ideas on this show that maybe a lot of people aren't getting exposed to. And maybe this might help change the balance of things. So
let's move on to our next caller here. We have Chris is joining us. Chris, how are you tonight, Chris? Where are you calling from?
I'm good. How are you? I guess maybe I'd rather not say where I'm calling from, just
Sure.
for privacy's sake.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yep.
First of all, I'd just like to, say thank you for your show, and the coverage you've done, and I thank you a lot for your coverage on Ukraine, because you guys seeing that this conflict is not necessary and it's not good for us, and you're seeing all the dimensions of that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback on that.
But I guess getting to what I wanted to say, I just wanted to say, I guess just bear with me when I say this, but I guess me as I kind of lean more to the the left wing side politically, like the far left, right? And I guess I'd like to say there are a lot of leftists, and surprisingly that there are even communists, like American communists, that very eloquently and very and very passionately defended our protests in Ottawa. And I can even name them for you. Caleb Maupin, he was a journalist on RT before RT got shut down. The Jimmy Dore show. Jimmy Dore really heavily, he is a leftist socialist, and he hardcore defended our protests because they defend it because they see it as a worker rights issue. Mm-hmm. And there's Max Blumenthal of the Gray Zone. Like, it would be really awesome if you guys are able to reach out to these people. Mm-hmm. I think maybe it would help to maybe bridge that divide, because obviously, building on what the last caller said, there's so many divides in society on this one big human issue that we're facing. Like, if you guys could reach out to more like left-wing people, like, not saying you have to, but like, I just mean, like, there are a lot of leftists who realize the problem we're facing, the central bank digital currencies, the jab, who understand the Great Reset, who understand the digital ID. I can give you more names. The Convo Couch, Craig Pasta Jardula, and Fiorella Isabella of the Convo Couch. There is the Nico House and the MCSC Network. There is Slow News Day, Steve Poikonen and Glory Jones of Slow News Day. Like, just to give you some for instances, I guess I'll admit, like, from a leftist standpoint, like, the left was slow to come to a realization of COVID, but like, yes, when they did.
You're right, and yeah. I think those sentiments are definitely echoed when you look at Bill Maher, because Bill Maher definitely walked back on the reality of the situation with it. But we had a guest on not too long ago, Joseph Borgo. He is the candidate for the leadership of the Canadian Conservative Party for federal. And he had stated that the left wing and the right wing are on the same bird. And I think with the left, it has moved so far left that it's not even the same. It's not even the same thing anymore. Because there is a lot of people who would consider themselves to be classical liberals.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why do you consider yourself to be on the far left?
Well,
because you don't sound like it to me.
You see, it's because I think, like, okay, first of all, I'll say this, like, there are people on the far left, like, again, like the Jimmy Dores and the Convo Couch, who are telling people on the left they have to start talking to people on the right so we can come together and deal with these issues.
Well, I've got a problem with this whole left-right dichotomy anyway. I don't think it applies. Yeah. I think it's
that's reasonable. Yeah,
I don't believe in
You're
that.
Correct.
So, but I'm just curious, what is it about your ideology that, like, what ideology do you subscribe to, or what is it that makes you think you're there? Because it sounds like you're about freedom of speech.
Oh yes.
Okay, so that's
leftists are for all those things.
No, I don't agree with that. What else? What else is it that you think is a far left thing?
What I would say is that I think the left has been very misunderstood. As a for instance, I don't think communism is evil, and I think communism has been heavily misunderstood. Communism is an economic condition. It's not oppression or anything like that. I think that when you look at communism in places like the Soviet Union or in China, people, like, yes, they may have taken an oppressive direction, but there are reasons for that. Like, as a for instance, like,
but what is it about you? What makes you far left. I don't get it.
How do I put this? I guess I'm anti-war,
Okay.
anti-imperialism.
That's not.
I think these are things we have in common.
Well, here I'll give you a far left.
I'll
test.
admit.
I'll give you a far left test, Chris.
Yeah.
How many
Okay.
genders are there?
I believe there are 2 genders.
Okay, yeah, you're not part.
But
left.
I don't. What I would say is, wait.
I'm just saying.
I'll
you
admit,
failed, you failed the smell test there.
No.
One moment. I didn't really want to get into that kind of debate. I just wanted to try to, extend an olive branch.
Sure. I think that's fair. And I'm happy to talk to people from all political persuasions. And as I've said before, I think the political landscape has been redrawn.
Yeah.
In recent years, especially in the last couple of years, which is why we're seeing people from all political stripes, if you will, joining, the People's Party of Canada. It's being portrayed as a far right organization. It is not. You're finding people in there, NDP, communists. Conservatives is where it started, with groups of conservatives, former Conservative Party people. But no,
sorry, not to interrupt, but
sorry,
not to interrupt, but now that I maybe to answer you guys' questions on what makes me far left, okay, if I were American in 2016, I would have either voted for Bernie Sanders or Jill Stein. If this was 2016, and in 2020, I would have either voted for Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, or Marianne Williams.
Why?
Marianne Williams was for reparations for African Americans, and I believe that's important. African Americans deserve reparations after centuries of slavery. Tulsi Gabbard, she had come up with a bill in the U.S. Congress called Stop Funding Our Enemies Act, because she had gone over to Syria and she talked to Bashar al-Assad, right?
Yeah.
And she was cognizant and aware of clandestine, I'll just leave it at clandestine support for ISIS in the various operations that were going on. Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders, he wants to put in place economic policies to help the working class and to uplift people, and use government programs to uplift people out of poverty.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand. The only thing that I've really got issue with a couple of things, but I've got some issues with the reparations, and I've got some issue with the Bernie Sanders economic policies. But I wouldn't even say the reparations things are necessarily left wing. It's simply a social issue, less than a political ideology, anything relating to political ideology. The Sanders economic issues, I'd say that's political ideology. But you don't sound like a real far left person in many respects, in some respects. But anyhow,
it sounds like we get along on a lot of the same issues.
Well, that's why we're seeing people come together, in many different ways already.
It's because, like I was saying to you, the left is very misunderstood. I would encourage you, if you can watch some of Jimmy Dore's videos, you'll find them on YouTube.
I've watched Jimmy Dore.
Or if you can, you've watched them.
Of course I have. Okay. I watch everything.
Well, that's great.
Or try to watch everything.
Cool. Or watch the Convo Couch if you can. They stream on YouTube at about 4:00, 4:30. Yeah, if you can type in the Convo Couch. Yeah, and listen to them, or Revolutionary Blackout Network, which is like an African American YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
They see a lot of the same problems you see. it's, I guess, I mean, even if you look at like when Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump were first like running in 2016, like there were a lot of similarities between the two extremes. Like Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump both were against NAFTA and how it destroyed American industry.
Yes.
Or Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump both agreed that all these overseas wars had a deleterious effect on society.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people, like, if they couldn't get Sanders, they were going to go for Trump.
Yep.
Because, I mean, the two extremes see the problem. Or as a, for instance, with Brexit, there were people on the right and people on the left who thought that Britain should come out of the Eurozone, right? From the left-wing standards, because the Eurozone hurts the working class people. The European Union, it's a neoliberal, undemocratic institution. And then there are many other reasons, like if you look for Tariq Ali, he will give you all the reasons from a left-wing standpoint that Britain should have came out of the European Union.
Yeah, you know, I appreciate what you're saying and I respect it. I think if we had more time to get into a more in-depth conversation, I'd like to illustrate for you that the reason I don't have a lot of tolerance for true far left wingers is because their policies lead to authoritarianism, and you cannot reconcile an authoritarian regime with freedom. It's not possible.
Let me put
let me give you this. Okay.
Can I just say this real quick, Chris? They're not.
Sorry, just the ideas are coming to my head. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I get it. They're not interested in having a conversation because anything that isn't their way, they're going to assume is going to hurt somebody, and that's why you can't talk to them. It's all empathy based. These things are really based in empathy. Black Lives Matter, and you can't say anything against that narrative because it's going to lead to a black person getting hurt or killed. It's all plays off the same stuff, and that's why they're not interested in having conversations, and that's why they're very interested in pro censorship. But the main point is that they actually don't care, and it's social engineering on a huge level. And that's what makes it dangerous.
Well, we're going to get
maybe.
You go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Sorry, no problem. Like what I would say is like capitalism does not have to equal freedom either. Like I mean, if you look at U.S. history, they had something called company towns, right? So in a company town, an employer, so workers would live in a literal town that existed beside the factory they worked at, right? This took place in the late 1800s, early 1900s, right?
Yeah.
So the owner of a corporation, he would own the neighborhood that the workers in his factory lived in. He owned the library, and you would have to pay fees just to rent library books. You couldn't use legal tender to purchase any groceries or anything like that you wanted. You had to use company scrip, which is company money. You so you didn't own your house. You couldn't buy the food you wanted with legal tender. I'm forgetting all the other facts about company towns because I'm thinking off my feet here. I'm not good at thinking on my feet, but and they're bringing company towns back, like Google. Oh yeah, like there are like corporations like Google.
Okay,
they want to have their own cities now in some U.S. states now. That's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not a free market. And don't think that we have a free market, and don't mistake the free market with capitalism. Like, how do you define capitalism? Because I think that's misunderstood.
Yeah.
Grossly.
I might describe this poorly, but capitalism is the system where individuals are allowed to gain capital for themselves, acquire capital, do what they can to acquire capital, and they are allowed to privately own it. That might be a poor description.
A capitalist is someone who simply makes money off their capital. It's someone like Justin Trudeau, who was born and granted a trust fund, and he sits on a giant pile of money and doesn't have to work. And all he does is live off the interest of the money. That's truly a capitalist. He just profits from the money itself without actually producing anything. That's what capitalism is. Capitalism is leveraging capital, money, to just make more money without actually
I can't disagree with that.
Without actually producing anything in and of itself. Now, that's not in and of itself bad either, but that's conflated with the free market. And a free market gives people access. In a free market, people would have access and be free to engage in commerce and trade freely among each other. And trade goods and services in exchange for what they think is a fair trade between you and I. Could, if I have a car to sell you, a used car, and you think the price is fair and we agree, and then we just agree on a price and we exchange the money and you get the car and away you go, right? That's the free market. Things get more complicated when the government gets involved and they start adding taxes and so on. And what you're describing with a company town and even a Google city, what we have here is a corporatocracy. And
totally.
honestly, I think that the mistake here is that is fascism. It's economic fascism, because what we have is the government in bed with corporations. And individuals are excluded from opportunities to engage in.
I can't disagree with that.
The free market. You are only then allowed to serve as a worker, and a certain elite group of people get to run everything, either on the corporate side or the government side, and everybody else is a serf. That's it. And that's what we have today.
Totally agree with that.
And we're moving more and more toward that all the time. That's also why we're seeing people like yourself and myself and Brendan all kind of coming together more, right? Because we see that this is actually quite evil, because the government then gets to pick winners and losers, and the government actually gets to pick the winning and losing corporations as well. And you can invest, I guess, in the stock market to some degree, and maybe you get a big windfall and and you score big on the on the stock market, but generally not, right? It's it just makes a slave class of people. That's what we're dealing with. And that is actually what Nazi Germany was built on.
Totally.
And that's what we have now today. It can work for a while. And they're fueling all of that with our money. They're borrowing and using and printing our money to give it to the big corporations to retool automotive plants and build nonprofit housing, and and it goes on. That's what nonprofit housing is about too. You want to talk about a company town? They're turning it into a company country. One big corporatocracy.
Totally with BlackRock. Oh, maybe let me say this too. Like, you'd be surprised to hear this, but in New York, Trump supporters and BLM teamed up to deal with the passport. So, like, I would say, like, as a for instance, if we can build bridges, like, there are things that you could find common ground with BLM supporters on, even, because I mean, for me, like, I was very sympathetic to BLM, and I did not like what they did to people in Ottawa. You know what I mean? And as a for instance, what they did to people in Ottawa during the 2020 BLM protests, they did that to people in the 2020 BLM protests, except the only difference is they did it every single night for like 5 months. And what I would say is to agree with you too, with the mainstream media. The mainstream media showed a very sanitized representation of what happened to those BLM protesters. And also to draw links also here in Canada, a thing that happened that really disturbed me is that Wet'suwet'en protesters, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see,
Wet'suwet'en.
Pardon me?
No, it's Wet'suwet'en. It is. He's got it right.
Yeah, Wet'suwet'en. Yeah, I'm sorry if I can't.
No, you've got it right.
I'm sorry if I can't pronounce it properly.
No, you did. You've got it 100% right.
Like to see solidarity with them too. Like I would say, look at it this way: like to stop the protests in Ottawa, Trudeau had to use all kinds of crazy extreme laws to shut that down. But with the Wet'suwet'en people, he doesn't even have to use any extreme laws. He could just go and do it.
Yeah.
Because in 2021, I had to find this out on Twitter that the RCMP they blockaded the whole Wet'suwet'en area, and they flew RCMP agents in, right, to go and deal with them. And back in 2019 also, when the railroad blockades ended, then the RCMP went after them at that time too, right? And they sent the same people in full military gear with rifles to deal with the Wet'suwet'en protesters. So, like, I say this to like, we need, I guess, to broaden the horizon, to say, like, I guess we're kind of all in this together.
Well, I appreciate the call. We're going to move on, though, Chris, and feel free to call back anytime.
Do what you have to do.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
We have Gary.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
No,
Pleasure
it's
for your time.
Our
Thank you.
privilege. Thank you. And we have Gary from Edmonton, and I don't think Chris was as far left as he thinks.
He didn't pass the smell test.
He's a little all over the map, but a lot of people are, and I think we have a lot of common ground there. Don't agree with him on some things, but
I think his heart's in the right place.
And how about you, Gary? What are your thoughts tonight?
Oh yeah, I actually was going to talk about what we were talking about. What the topic was. And this is Gary from Edmonton. We've talked before.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that you're. I'm glad to see you're better, Rick.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's but you're better because you have a serious purpose, and big guys looking out for you. So you're around. But I actually, there's been the last couple of callers have made some very good points, and I think I'm going to have to kind of go along with what some of the other people are saying here. I think we have evolved past left or right issues, and I think that is one of the reasons why there is a lot of people on the left that are saying the exact same thing. They're seeing the exact same things that we all are, because it really is becoming more apparent to me that this really is about basically good and evil and what's right or wrong. And, we're seeing what's going on with, the centralization. We know it's not right. We know it's not right. And so we're going to stand our ground and keep on fighting the good fight.
And this whole conversation started tonight over, this budget, and it's only a 0.5% increase in the Bank of Canada rate that's sparked this conversation tonight. But
that's right.
It's an indication of things that are coming, and they've told us that there's going to be more rate hikes in the weeks and months ahead. So what are your thoughts with regard to that as it relates to what you're talking about?
Well, I don't think that right now the government that's running our government is on the left, but I think that's only because of coincidence, or that's just the way it is. I think that if the leadership of Canada would have dropped into the right's way of doing it, or not, into the conservatives, and what was the last he was such a failure. I can't even remember his name.
Talking about Harper?
O'Toole.
O'Toole.
Well, no, Harper. Yeah, O'Toole. So I think that if he would have been running the country, he would be implementing the same things that are happening all over the world right now.
Bingo.
So, yeah, exactly, right, Rick? So basically, they're doing, they want everybody to be divided, and you can see the way it is. You know, Rick, you've seen it all already. But yeah, and then the other caller, I think his name was Brian from Miami Beach, but he was saying, we have to keep communicating, but it's pretty tough to be communicating when the media and everybody else is covering up everything that's going on and dividing even more. So, it's really time for a real change, that's for sure. But I don't know. I can't see the way that the government is doing things right now to crumble everything to turn it into what they want. How can that be right? How can that be good for any country? How can that be good even for the world? So, yeah, I don't know. I still think Gary from Antarctica, he had some really good things to say. And I've done a lot more research over the last, couple weeks. And yeah, we're really divided. And the last guy did have a good point too. I mean, reaching out to other people to get their opinions it's very hard to do though, because everybody's so brainwashed right now. That, what did Gary say? It's just a big marketing campaign, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
You hit on a good point there, man. That it is hard to communicate with people because of the brainwashing, and we're also seeing something different happening where there is a great kind of I wouldn't want to call it a great awakening. It's like a slow awakening, but it is happening. And I kind of don't know what to make of it, because there is a lot of people coming over, and a lot of people are just starting to see like, oh, this is what's going on. Oh, look at all this censorship, or oh, look, they don't talk about any of the real issues.
Right.
I don't know what to make of it. Any thoughts about that? Do you think that, how big do you think that is? Is this just something that I'm seeing in my echo chamber, or is this something that you're seeing in your own life as well?
No, I'm seeing this in my own life, and I'm seeing this in millions of other people's lives all over the world. And I'm seeing a lot of people reaching out to what they thought was the other side. You know what I mean? And it's really become a world issue. They've made it into a world issue, but like basically, I don't want to get too deep into this stuff, but if you really want to look into some things, there was something called Operation Looking Glass.
Yeah.
And, they basically got a glimpse into the future, and they saw us evolving into almost a perfect place to live. You know what I mean? And yes, there was problems and there was other things happening, but basically that scared them. So that's why everything was set in motion. And when things happened in Ottawa, the whole world was watching. The whole world was watching. Like, Rick, if the media wasn't, so screwed up and you were still there at CTV, you would have been, broadcasting all this stuff that happened, and everybody would have seen it. I think the whole world, everything would have changed right there, Rick. And Brendan, like everything would have been perfect. Like we're basically.
The problem is I had to leave because I know that if I had been there and I had tried to do my job the way I used to do my job, they would not have allowed me to do it. Because
no, you did the right thing.
I left because they were preventing me from doing my job the way I knew it needed to be done. And it was slowly happening. It was happening at the CTV national level, not so much at the regional and local level, but national, yes. And it was filtering down, and I had to get out.
Yep. And you made a choice, and long before a lot of people now are really starting to wonder who am I working for? Are they part of the WEF? Because it's actually quite apparent. It's all over. It's all over our cities. It's all over the place. Not so much in the rural places it is as well. But you made a choice, and a lot of us are making that choice. But you made it a long time ago, and that's good on you, because a lot of people would have just kept going, put on the blinders, so to speak, and just do their job, and without even knowing maybe what's going on. But I don't know if a lot of people know what's going on that even work in media. I don't know if they're like.
I would say no. And first off, that's what makes Rick. That's what makes Rick a Maverick. But no, they're not aware. We've seen the misinformation, disinformation. New York, or I can't remember what the name of the magazine was, but it's when that kid was at that conference and he ripped Brian Stelter a new one. The media is not aware, and in fact, they don't even understand why people don't like them anymore, and they don't understand that why when Fox News goes to the trucker protest, they get surrounded by hundreds of people and the news anchor is cool with it and et cetera, et cetera. But then CBC, CTV go there. They can't even have their logos on their band because people will lose their mind. If you pay attention to Twitter, if you pay attention to Twitter, sometimes like the New York Times or other journalism things will hold spaces and you can hear them talk. And the way they talk is with disdain for the common people and with no interest in understanding what the common people are going through.
Oh, I know. It's awful.
So they don't understand. Really I believe I've seen statements from a lot of them saying, "Oh, I wear this criticism as a badge of honor." Like they're happy to piss us off.
Well, I think there's lots of good people in the media, though, that are just scared and as lost as humanity is right now, and they need our empathy. Like that's another point. Absolutely no violence at all, and because we've talked about this before. As soon as you do anything like that, you become what you're fighting against.
Yes.
So it has to stay like that. And I don't know. Did I just cut myself off?
No. I have, illustrated how it works, how the flow of information starts at the top and flows down. And as some reporters at the regional and local level, even the national level, are not really aware. They're just regurgitating information that they're fed, and they believe and they accept it as fact because it comes from, say, the New York Times. Others, I think, are aware, and they engage in the practice of spinning tales and even outright lying. And I've even had conversations with local reporters who engage in that kind of conduct, and to my dismay. And the old rules of journalism have gone right out the window. And that happened, really largely back in 2016 with the Trump election, when the media was working actively to prevent him from becoming elected. And I talked to local reporters who were making shit up. And I said, why would you do that? Wow. And the response was, well, the gloves are off when it comes to Trump. Yep. I thought, well, what about your ethics? What about truth? What about morality? No, it doesn't matter.
But I have some hope in regards to this. I mean, we did even have some of that hope on this very show. We had Rachel Emmanuel on. She's also a true Maverick, where she left. I think it was called iPolitics. Is that right, Rick?
Yeah, I believe so. And then she's over at the Western Standard now, which is doing some pretty good work, actually.
Mm-hmm. So I think that we might see a bit more of that, and they're going to try and hide it as much as possible. But I do commend any journalist that sticks up for these principles of truth and ethics and that sort of stuff. So yeah, they do deserve our empathy.
Yep, and they didn't take the money. That's the reason why. It's all greed and fear. I mean, that's the thing. That's the biggest thing right now is fear. I mean, it's used so much right now to control everybody. Everybody's afraid. Everybody's, I don't want to say where I'm from. I mean, I've just given up on that. I mean, if they're honestly looking at Gary and Edmonton, then that means I'm pretty important. Like, that's okay. I don't mind if they want to be. And that means they have fear. They can take on that if they want.
Ooh, that's a truth bomb. That's amazing.
It is. That's a God bomb. that stuff. And I'm telling you, like I was so lost in despair. Just like a lot of people over the last 2 years, because I am an artist. I'm a singer songwriter. I'm a pretty, I'm a fairly decent guitar player, and I can play a lot of different instruments. I've taught kids, I've taught adults, I've taught children with Down syndrome. And so some of the best times I've had were with these kids, like kids with autism. Amazing stuff, just an amazing. I've had a lot of great things happen in my life. And then, I moved to Edmonton, and right around the same time all this stuff starts to happen, eh? And there's a lot of people that just fell right into because we could see what was going on, and nobody else saw what was going on. And but I found strength in faith in the Bible, and it definitely happened as soon as I saw what was going on with the truckers and the freedom movement. I mean, that changed things for me. And then luckily I have some people in my life that I met as a result of all the protests and everything else, or us awakened people. And then I started to get help, you know what I mean? Like actual, like spiritual healing. And I'm just not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid of anything. Anything that's happening is going to happen no matter what. We can fight. We can do what we want to do. But there's a reason why they're doing these things. They know that there's something that's happening that nobody can do anything about. And I think the best thing to do is just get right with God and keep on fighting the good fight. And that's about it. Oh, one other thing I wanted to say was, I think that basically this whole WEF government, world government that they want to have, it's clearly, it's not right. It's just not good. And we can tell, we know this, we feel it, and that's it. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, guys, because you guys probably have other people waiting. It's actually 7:10, so.
Yeah, it's we're about ready to wrap up here. So we do appreciate the call, but make sure you call back, because it's always a pleasure.
I gotta say,
thanks a lot, guys.
I'm just gonna say one last thing to you.
Sure thing.
I got chills from your story, man. I know what it's like to start over in a new place, and then the pandemic comes, and you're probably very gig oriented in your life. Like that's a tough time. Thank you for sharing your story. It's very important.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Brendan. Thank you. You guys take care. I'm like I said, I'm glad that you're well better, Rick. And Brendan, I knew that you'd only be sick for a little bit, because you're a young guy. You've got lots of piss and vinegar, like we used to say back in the day. But
well, again, I appreciate you. Keep sharing your story, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, next time. And I'm sure like things might be even more darker than even darker than they were before. But there's always that hope, and just watch, you start to see things through a different light if you just start to just, you know what it all is about? Just being good, just feeling good about things, not, you know, if you're one of these people that's hard on themselves and just says, you know, something loosely, you think it doesn't matter. You're like, oh, how stupid am I ever stupid for doing that? You're actually hurting yourself, you know? You're like, and you know, the positivity is what's gonna, it's what's gonna shake them down. And maybe I'm hoping that Trudeau gets a haircut pretty soon, because I'm sick of looking at him like he's, you know, some guy that I'd like go in the back alley and have a joint with after a show or something. You know?
Yeah, I know.
You said that, and the first thing that comes to mind is like sheep shearing.
Well, I think he should get a haircut as severe as his attitudes are.
Yeah.
You know, if you really think of us as this, then why try to pretend that you're, you know, this easygoing guy that is so forgiving and stuff, like
sunny ways.
You know, you're so about image. Just get that haircut. Anyway,
all right.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Gary. Have a great night. Take care.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Gary from Edmonton. And we appreciate him joining us on the program. We do need your help. You can help us by donating at freedomreporters.com. You can click the hot link in the YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble descriptions and go directly to the, we're getting a little feedback here, and go directly to the donation page. And I think Gary might still be there. And we appreciate all the support that we've already had from folks who have donated over the last number of months when we've been doing this broadcast. Lots more work to do, as we keep telling you. Lots of plans to expand our coverage here. I am working on the website. Being ill over the last week or so has sort of put a damper on that and put things a little bit behind schedule. But as of today, I started catching up on some work that's been piling up since I was laid up. And thank you all for your well wishes and your get well wishes over the last week. I'd really appreciate it. Touches me. It makes me feel warm inside, and I appreciate it. And thank you, Brendan, for holding down the fort here solo for a few days while I was incapacitated.
And thank the viewers for putting up with me, because interesting experience.
No, I got it. All I got was positive feedback on what you were doing, so that was very good. So I appreciate that very much. And to everybody out there, thanks for putting up with me and allowing me to come back and intruding on your love fest with Brendan. But now you've got me, and you can't get rid of me again. So
exactly.
To all my leftist friends, I am once again apologizing for not dying.
Well, with that being said, then we did cover a broad range of topics tonight. We discussed interest rate hikes, and God help us for what we're about to receive. We talked about Joe Biden getting poo-pooed on. So I hope that brightened up everybody's day a little bit. It did mine.
Where did he get pooped on? I didn't see the video.
No, I'll show you after.
Just tell me.
It was in Iowa.
Was it on his head?
Oh, it was on his like
right there.
He's talking. He's like, it's like weird.
So now President Poopy Pants has poopy on his blazer too.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
But with that being said, I'm the co-host here at Maverick News, and the host, I guess, of the Brendan Kennedy Show. And I'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much.
And I'm Rick Walker, also with the Maverick News Channel. And we are the Freedom Reporters. And we will catch you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat station. Catch y'all on the flip side. Oh, one other thing. Very important. Tomorrow, special, super special guest, Jim Karahalios, New Blue Party of Ontario. He's the leader of the party, and he's going to join us on the program. So we get to find out about the party platform and ask him whatever questions, I guess, are relevant tomorrow. Bill 67, censorship, the Bill 100, the critical race theory in schools, all of these things. And it might seem like it's just isolated to Ontario at the moment, but no, it's not. What happens here will set a precedent possibly across Canada and will affect what's going on in the US as well. So he's an important person to listen to, and they are going to be a factor for sure in the upcoming provincial election in Ontario. So it's a must see tomorrow. Very knowledgeable guy, freedom loving guy, I might add.
Mm-hmm.
So we're excited to speak with Jim, and I think it's going to be a great show. So you don't want to miss that one tomorrow. Jim Karahalios, leader of the Ontario New Blue Party, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as Brendan said, right here on the Maverick News Channel. Catch y'all tomorrow night.